son about it.
Maybe
He
we had.
looked it up right away. He probably got his friends to watch it.
That would be helpful. Whoa. Look what it automatically does.
What?
It takes my banner and makes it our thing.
Oh, wow, what is that?
That is a painting of Genesis, just everything with Genesis.
What is that on the rock?
I don't
I
know.
see the snake, but it's a guy and a girl sitting, or is she coming out of his torso?
It's yeah, that's a Adam and Eve. The whole thing is really long, and so
Mhm.
there's multiple Adam and Eves just showing different parts of
Mhm.
the story. I think that this is it's old, but I think it's an Orthodox
Okay.
icon. I'm pretty sure. Let me make sure. Sounds good. I should probably connect to your Wi-Fi too.
Go ahead.
Ugh. This whole part can be cut out, but I think if we let it roll on live, we might pick up a few people. Maybe.
No.
Okay. All right. Check, check, check. We're going to get this going here in a moment. If you're tuning in, today on In the Beginning was the thought we are going to.
You know, I did mention this Mario. I mentioned it to Paul,
Yeah?
and he listened to the whole thing.
So my mic is sounding good.
All right.
We're just waiting to get settled in here. But we're going to be finishing
Test, test.
Dorian Gray. Let me see how you sound.
Test, test.
It's on a delay. So just a moment on that. Stream is clean. You sound good. I think as long as we keep it close. I'm going to exit out of that so my phone doesn't die, so I have access to the notes. All right. And also, I think I need a little bit better of a mix. Too low? No, that's probably pretty good. What do you got there?
This is Dorian Gray.
Oh, it is. It's the book. All right. Yeah. Yeah, that's actually really good. I like this. It's more comfortable.
Yeah.
I think so.
And look, the seats recline if you so choose.
All right.
There's buttons
on the other side of the couch there.
You're definitely going to want that one closer to you.
All right.
If you can. If you need any help, I can set you up.
I'm using this to stabilize the base of the seat. All right.
You need it to stick out more?
Yeah, that's what I'm having some trouble with. I think it's this.
Yeah, it is.
But
Hold on to it so it doesn't just droop.
there you go. Yeah,
More.
that's good.
Let's see if that's still stable.
Yep. We're good.
I should get like a sandbag. They got hammers, actually.
I got weights.
Well, that works.
My dumbbells outside.
So if we ever have to do that, we could do that. I'll check it one more time and let it. I don't know if we have anyone tuning in, but if anyone is tuning in, if you would be so kind, bear with us and maybe share. It is pretty late on most areas in America. All right, I'll check your sound one more time.
Check, check.
Give me another one.
Check, check.
Okay. All right. Talk like where you are right now and see if it still sounds good.
Check, check. 1, 2, check.
Cool. That we have some freedom now, so we can move around and it sounds good. Pretty
Right.
much wherever we're at. All right. I'll go ahead and do it then. All right. Welcome to In the Beginning Was the Thought. Tonight, we're going to go ahead and finish, I believe we'll finish tonight, the picture of Dorian Gray.
Yes.
We've been out for about 2 weeks.
Holidays.
Yeah,
They're
holidays.
demanding.
We also ended up, as you can see, moving our location. If you're watching, if you're not listening on the podcast. So we are in a different location. And so it might be possible that our lives might start running like around this time, I would think, maybe,
Yeah.
on Fridays and stuff. 9-ish or 10-ish. So on most Fridays, you'll be able to catch us here at this
Right.
time live. I wanted to say that the video performed pretty well compared to other projects I've had going as far as time frame. So I appreciate any returning listeners. If you watched that first one, I really appreciate that. That was pretty.
Yeah, Derek was very happy with the numbers. I'm new to this, so I'm just kind of riding the coattails of his excitement at this point, you know. But 800 views, and most people watched a significant portion of the video. So thank you all for tuning in. And again, I know we're rambling and we're speaking in layman's terms about books that we like, things that we've read. Just to reiterate from the last video, neither one of us are experts in these fields. We just want to give our opinions and give our thoughts about different aspects of stories that we come in contact with.
Yeah. They're modest numbers compared to like most established channels, but I don't have an established channel. I mean, I've had videos on there, but they've never been like of a consistent, like I've done a bunch of different things on there.
Right.
And nothing super long term. So the engagement was really nice to see. Speaking of engagement, though, I do think that we should address a set of comments, returning comments that we had. on the video. I think there was a bit of a misunderstanding
Right.
from a viewer. And if you want to go to the first video and take a look at those comments, I went ahead and took control, just so everyone knows it was me commenting. So I went ahead and defended our channel because I thought it was a bit. The comments were a bit strange when I first read them. I was like, what is this?"
Based on what I read, I think the comments were presumptive. I believe that the person may believe that we're trying to start a religious channel. This channel is an experience, an experiment in thought. That's what it is. The idea is just to throw around different aspects of stories and dissect them. Now, the in the beginning was the thought seems to be what this person was hung up on.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
As if we were trying to replace the word or the logos or Christ with our title. No, we were what we're attempting to do is show that, as I said in the first video, before any of us act, before any of us make moves, we have to contemplate what the moves are we're going to make, what are the causes and effects of those moves. And you do the same thing in literature. When you encounter a story, you use everything that you know about the world and your experience to translate the story into something you can relate to. But I don't think that the person who made the comments saw it that way. I think they saw the title and just went off the title. And I'm not mad, you could, yeah, definitely, respect your opinion, but I think this is not the channel you thought it was.
Yeah. I so I one of the things I plan on doing more and more is going through the biblical stories. So I enjoy the title, and I think that we'll discuss them quite a bit here. We're not like a de facto religious channel.
Right.
We both happen to believe in what we believe in. I'm a Lutheran. You're Catholic.
Right.
So we do have that background. We were culturally brought up as Christians, right?
Very similar in a very similar area of the country.
Yeah. And so it would be impossible for that faith philosophy to not make its way into it. And then also I appreciated in the beginning was the thought because and like I commented to the guy, and you guys can go ahead and read it. I told him that the reference is not blasphemous. First off, I think it would actually be taken by pretty much every Christian. I think they would understand.
Right.
In the beginning was the word, W-O-R-D, is a translation.
Right.
Word is not the actual word that was written.
Right.
Okay. And the word, they chose that translation because it was the best fitting English language word for that spot. And this is why you will hear a lot of Christians talking about logos. Jordan Peterson has two really awesome, well, it's actually a series of three. The first lecture on Genesis, a second set of videos on Exodus, which I predated him by 2 years, which I'm really proud of that. Those videos will be popping up on this channel. You guys will see those old videos. And the new one is the gospel. Right. And they'll talk about logos.
Right.
Tons of people are talking about it.
Right.
It's in the zeitgeist, and it's the reason it's important, how we can come, you could take the word and put thought, you could put thought there, even though you're not going to find it as a Bible translation, it is related to the meaning.
Right.
I don't know if this individual knows what all etymological what is all connected to logos, but logic
Right.
is connected to logos.
Indeed. Yeah.
Dialogue is connected to logos. Logos in Greek has a lot to do with rationality, with thinking, and with speaking. And when when this was being used, the philosophy predates Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
The Christians were trying to express an idea, so logos gets adopted into the faith, and it has a lot to do with the relationship between consciousness and divinity. There's a
Okay.
relationship between logic and Christ, in speaking and in Christ. The other thing I wanted him to take a look at that might help him out, and I want to make sure I read this correctly. For where two or three are gathered together in my name.
I will be there.
That's right.
Hebrews, I believe, chapter 20.
And this refers to dialogos. And I wrote to him, Thomas and I will use the patterns of the Bible to reveal the spiritual, psychological, and natural truths that we find in literature.
Right.
So throughout the shows, we're not just going to be, in fact, I don't think we even did it on the first episode. We're not cross-referencing the Bible with Dorian Gray. It could happen,
Yeah.
if it fits, but we're gonna mention, I don't know, we might mention the Iliad, we might mention Dante's Inferno,
Right.
we might mention,
We did mention the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Mahabharata. We could,
I made a reference to Macbeth.
yeah, Macbeth. We could use modern day philosophers like Soul. We can use past philosophers, Voltaire, Nietzsche. We talked about Jung.
Young, yeah,
It's not going to
Neumann.
be just a how do I want to say it? Something. It's not going to be a channel where we just want to take every book and compare it to the Bible or
Right.
find biblical meaning in the book. You know, it's more. For instance, if we see something that parallels anything that we've seen before, no matter what religion we've studied, we want to point it out. If it's necessary, sometimes it may not even be necessary to point it out through religion. It might just be,
Right.
This is a historical event that happened that reminds me of this situation in the book. Like,
Right.
I'm sure when we get into Wages of Destruction, there's going to be a lot of that.
Yeah.
You know,
That's, by the way, I am so excited. Also, Wages of Destruction has to happen. I think those will have to happen.
yeah,
I think the history is something I'm super, super excited about.
Yeah.
To analyze it in the way that we were analyzing literature.
right.
Because I had just finished that John Adams book, and I'm already looking at it like, oh man, like, oh, this would be. I've never tried it before.
Yeah, and you know,
Super stoked.
I was speaking of the history. I was came across a channel today where they were talking about it may be a mistake for us to believe that China wants Taiwan more than it wants Manchuria. And I had forgotten about that entire history. The Sino-Russo Wars, the
Gonna say it was just in
bankrupting the enemy.
Bankrupting the enemy.
Yeah, the fall of the Korean dynasties, and yeah, just different things, patterns, if you would, patterns in history that I'm very interested in, that seem to repeat themselves without abetting. So, yeah, that's what the channel is going to be about now. If you want to be offended at a reference that we make in any religion about any religion, that's going to be a you problem. I'm going to, if we run into Islam, if we run into Judaism, if we run into Hinduism, and we see something that we want to talk about, we're going to talk about it. And I hope that you understand that we're taking this from an intellectual point of view and not a religious point of view. We're just analyzing the meaning behind what's stated if we do decide to bring any of that up.
Yeah, I will. I wanted to also mention that there's two references to in the beginning. Obviously, there's the Genesis one, and there's the idea of breath, the idea of breath and spirit, and this is where the connection to speaking comes in. In the beginning was the word, and so you have speaking, logos, logic, and dialogue. And what me and him, me and Thomas are doing here in dialogue, I like, uh, for instance, like a Jonathan Vervaeke practice is you'll hear me say dialogos instead of dialogue because I want to try to actually practice that, which means trying to listen. And there's one more thing because I do think that this individual who commented on our stuff, you go check it out. I think he's very troubled. He just came into the faith, and I hope he sticks with it. I hope he works very hard at it and keeps doing what he's doing and keeps reading. But my advice to you, sir, would be to slow down a little bit, watch things, listen to people, practice dialogos. Dialogos is not about just speaking; it's about listening. And then the other one I think you should check out is agapic love. It's a very Christian idea. I think you should practice it. And whatever's going on in your life, whatever is causing these knee-jerk reactions and these fire and brimstone judgments onto people who do not rate those judgments. And also, I will say, this is a very Lutheran thing: is I'll be judged by God. So maybe slow down, practice agapic love. Look into it, but agapic love is where you start hearing the things about the golden rule and loving strangers or loving. Practice it. If you want people to come to the faith, don't reject them from the faith before you even know what you know what I mean?
Right. And
Don't-
keep in mind that knowledge speaks, wisdom listens.
Yeah.
So if you want to understand and become wiser in your walk with God, and not push people away, not us, but people who might run into your channel, you may want to sit back and listen to what they have to say rather than being so judgmental as you were in the comments. That's really all I have to say about it.
Yeah. So I wish you the best, my friend, and please keep listening to our channel.
Definitely.
Please keep listening and
Things get
engaging.
better for you. I watched a couple of your videos. You're having it rough, man. You're having it rough, and I hope that everything gets better for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I really do think it will. One of the reasons I like talking about literature in this way and thinking about it, and I think one of the things that really makes our friendship what it is
Yeah.
are the discussions about it. I think, I believe that watching stories, listening to stories, telling stories, reading stories, can help you.
Yeah.
Truly, truly, truly can there's a book called Wonderworks.
Mhm.
Let me make sure I get the author's name. Give him a shout out. Wonderworks was a study done and published in this book. And it talks about, excuse me, I'm sorry. Talks about these studies and reading. Wonderworks by Angus Fletcher. Let me see if I can get a synopsis and see what they say. But it covers all these studies about what stories can do for you. My point being, I hope that gentleman keeps reading the Bible because
Right.
that I think that could really pull you through truly. Um, okay, we just need a synopsis. I don't even know if you'd call it a synopsis because it's not a fiction, but oh, here we go.
Cliff note
Yeah, something to. I am not paying you.
or
Okay.
spark notes.
A close analysis of the science of stories reveals literature's ability to change its readers and the world. Um, that's a whole article, but essentially the book is split into these sections, and it talks about uh, studies showing that people are braver or more brave after reading, that they tolerate pain at a higher threshold after reading,
Yeah.
that they can solve puzzles faster after reading,
Yeah.
a whole bunch of stuff like this. And
Well, it's true because when you're reading, you have to create that world in your mind, in your mind's eye, and by creating that world, you can, to some degree, live in it.
mhm,
It's being projected. You can see it. I do know sometimes when, not even sometimes, most times if I'm reading a fantasy book, I will forget, not forget, but how do I say it? It I'm not seeing the words anymore. I'm seeing the actual story play. And when
right.
I readjust and I'm back and I'm looking, it's like I just read all of this,
Yeah.
but I didn't notice that I read it all. It was almost like it was being downloaded into my head and I can
And you were
just
in
see
the,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, I was off.
in the environment.
Yeah. One of my favorite books was when I growing up was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I can tell you, man, I don't think I've ever really paid attention to the words on the page more than I paid attention to the images that the words were putting in my mind
Yeah.
of the things that were happening, and that's how that's why I believe what you say about reading and how it changes your perspective. I mean, from something like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy to a book like We the Living
Mhm.
by Ayn Rand. I can't remember the main character's name. It was a female, but you could almost see the world through her eyes. And when she was ultimately killed at the end, I I could see the the lights, the searchlights. I could see the snowy cliff that she was on. I could see the blood running out of her down the snowdrift. I can see her tattered clothes and her trying to get away. But this was all happening in my mind. I was actually reading it, and it goes on and on and on. Every book, and it gave me a different perspective of what it was like to grow up in communist Russia or to live there. You know.
I think that's the other thing too. If you're reading a book where somebody, because I have not read this, but it just you saying somebody growing up in communist Russia, you are able to, you can take in patterns that you wouldn't otherwise be exposed to.
Mhm.
Uh, Living in contemporary West, I can read through history and get an idea of what one must do in various scenarios in which I don't have the ability, I don't have the circumstances to enact um, certain activities. So you're getting like a survival pattern recognition from experience in the narrative, and um, this can make you better at solving problems, or you might face a certain scenario and say, "I'm familiar with this. I know this struggle.
I've seen this before.
I've seen this before." Yeah.
Right.
Um, and I think music can do this and stuff too. But like for instance, they're making a movie. I forget the name, but Ray Fiennes is playing in it, and it's the last portion of uh, the Odyssey when Odysseus comes home
Hmm.
and he's disguised as the old old man, the beggar, and the men are trying to court his wife, and the whole thing with the axes, and all of that stuff. Um, and I was thinking when I was watching this, well, I'm gonna have to watch this movie. This looks pretty good. I love this story. That book was written, I think, in like 750 BC,
Yeah.
like 756
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
BC.
you're extremely old.
And here we are. Somebody has just spent however much money, a few $1 million on a production, actors dedicating the time, taking time, all these crew people taking time out of their lives to come go do this. Obviously, you have motivations of art, motivations of money, whatever. And then a bunch of people like you and I, normal people, are going to go take their well earned money, labor, like equivalents of whatever their labor is, whatever, however many hours to go sit and watch a flashing screen to watch this story again.
And
And we've been,
not even watch it from your point of view, from that person, from the director's point of view.
and we've been doing it
Yeah.
for how long? How many Odysseys are there? How many? How many? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And to me, pushing my arm on there. Anyway, there's a reason why we'll keep going back to those stories. And I think it's because of how profound the patterns are to us, even if we don't fully understand them,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. But I think it would be an advantage for people who would rather see the stories told in picture, because one of the things that I did notice is that when I read any story, and then when I go see the the movie, it is completely different than what
Sure. Oh,
I
yeah.
saw it in my head. The Godfather was one in particular, and the other one was The Family by Mario Puzo. I saw that. Had I directed the movie, it would have been it would have been visually spectacular. I saw it completely different than what Mario did. But then again, he was from New York. He kind of grew up around that. Myself, just the words on the paper, translating into
Mm-hmm.
my mind's eye, I saw a completely different visual stimulus than I expected when I saw the movie. Uh, and that would be with the family more than the Godfather, because I actually saw the Godfather first, so I knew what to expect. Um, but with the family, when I watched after I read the book and I watched the Borgias, completely different than
Yeah.
what I had in mind. So I think everyone should give themselves the the opportunity to create these stories in their head first, instead of just you know taking someone else's story.
Yeah, I would definitely advocate for reading more.
Mhm.
Um, Obviously, I'm a film student, so it's like
Yeah,
I have a love for cinema. But I had a love for cinema because I had a love for storytelling. And
yeah,
I had, in my youth, more cinema around because my
right,
father's love of cinema too. That's what he does for a living. Well, not like a full living, but that's what he's been doing for the last like 10 years.
right.
And so I'll always have a love for cinema, but
Oh, and
I read and read
yeah,
and read and
can
read.
continue to do that. It's just that for let me give you an example. I read Solomon Rushdie's Satanic Verses, right?
Hmm.
And the story is amazing. All right, and the pictures that it gives you in your mind remind me of what's the guy who did the first the Batman's when we were little.
Tim Burton?
Tim Burton. My first thought was Tim Burton. If this is ever made into a movie, it has to be Burton.
Sure,
You know,
yeah.
it gives you those vibes. Um, and visually in my head, it was one of the most colorful stories that I had ever seen. You know,
Excuse me.
I'm sure that if anybody was to was to turn that story into a movie, which I doubt they will because the book is too controversial, but it would probably be completely different than the way I saw it. But it was definitely a Tim Burton like experience to me.
Hollywood could use a revolution as far as bravery goes.
Yeah.
I totally get why they don't
Yeah.
right now because so back in the day, you would only have your viewings in theaters. That was all you had.
Mhm.
Um, and so there weren't as many risks taken. Risks were just inherent because of a lack of it being done before.
Right.
That was your only version of risk, and going against the board to any capacity. That was it. Then you got VHS and home rentals, and they were able to make more risks, and with DVDs and stuff because they knew I might have a sleeper hit here,
Right.
right? I can make something like Fight Club, take a little bit of the risk. Fight Club did horrible in theaters, but it did a phenomenal in sales and rentals.
It was an excellent movie and an even better book.
Yeah,
Paul Nurchuk was a genius with that. Although I'm not really sure where you're going with number two.
that was a
But
weird. That was
I
weird.
did read it.
So did I. I was very sad.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, damn.
I actually have the book over there on that shelf, Fight Club down there.
I will admit that I got rid of my copy,
Yeah.
and I don't get rid of books.
No.
But I was so offended and heartbroken
Over number two.
because I was like, what is this? It was like a joke to the
Yeah.
audience because
Yeah.
of the it was like a Deadpool comic or something,
Yeah.
like referencing the audience, referencing the writer. Uh, Probably a fun experiment for him, but did it need publication?
No. That was probably one of my most disappointing times at Barnes and Noble. I sat there and read that whole damn thing.
My disappointment came in waves because I didn't know about it until I saw it on the shelf.
Exactly. That's how I saw it too. And it was
And
over by the manga and comic stuff. You know,
yeah,
it's like, no, what is this?
graphic novels and shit. So I saw it first in that print, and then I spent time convincing myself that, oh, this could be cool.
Yeah.
You know, I was somewhere in the back of my head there was a voice saying it should have been a novel. You know, but I got through the first few pages and I was like, oh, this is sick. He's got a family. Like this makes sense. If
Him and
if he
Marlene stay
if
together.
if he's like a demon thing that can move, an entity that can move into other people, that's a new dynamic that could be really fun, like the sins of the father type story.
Yeah.
I was like, that's cool. So I got through a few pages. Then you go further and further, and then you have those. What's that disease that all those weird people that they're like jumping out of planes and shit. They started like a whole weird army thing, and Marla was, dude, it
I
was
can't remember it.
it was ridiculous. I don't know what that disease is, but where like the people they kind of like they get really large heads, their eyes are very close
Yeah.
together. They had like characters like that, and then there was like a support group for them, kind of a callback to the old
Yeah. To the
like
old-
cancer groups and stuff.
Right.
But then all of a sudden they're like overthrowing the government, and then they're like jumping out of planes and shit. It just things get way over the top, and then it
I kind
references.
of like the idea of a demonic entity moving from body to body. It reminds me of Azazel,
Yeah,
the demon that was portrayed in that Denzel Washington movie. What was it called?
a Denzel Washington movie with a
Yeah.
demon.
Yeah, it was a fallen angel. It was called Fallen. That's what it was called.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
And he's tracking a killer, but the killer is Azazel, and it moves from body to body to body.
Right.
And when he figures it out, he's walking down the street, and Azazel's singing the same song, but different parts from every body that he possesses as he's walking down the street, and he's seeing them. And then a little girl comes, a guy comes, a woman comes, singing a song, and looking right at him.
I like that.
That would have been a great twist.
Exorcist 3,
Well,
right? Gemini Killer. You ever see that one?
no.
Gemini Killer. So, the pastor, what's his name? Well, anyway, so this serial killer gets locked up in an insane asylum, but he's possessed by Pazuzu. But using the body, Pazuzu is able to like leave the body and then go into different people. and commit all these Gemini killings, even though the Gemini killer is locked up. But it happens because of the. It's very good, by the
Yeah,
way.
it sounds like a good movie.
If you watch the Exorcist movies, skip part 2. It's garbage. Go straight to 3. It's incredible.
You know, another Exorcist movie that I really liked was the Emily Rose.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I watched that when I was like a teen, and it freaked me out.
yeah, but the girl, if you remember her, she's from
Like Dexter, isn't she in
she
Dexter?
is in Dexter, but she was also the girl from who was that?
White
That
Chicks.
not White Chicks. Oh yeah, she is in White Chicks too.
Yeah.
But I think she's also in that. I can't think of the dang movie back in the '90s or something like that. It was with man, my brain is fried here. What is the girl who was in all of the Aerosmith videos?
Is like his
other
daughter?
The other one, not Liv Tyler, but the other one. She was kind of famous back then.
Oh boy, I don't know. I'm not very. I don't know. I don't listen to their stuff
It
really.
was, I think it was that movie where they were like preppy valley girls. But I might be getting that mixed up with White Chicks because I think it was White Chicks she was in.
Shit. Yeah. Isn't she the? Well, she might not be because I forget what girl did. I have not seen that movie in a while. But I think she's the one that's like, I'm fat, right? Is she that one, or she's like can't get in the? I don't. It doesn't matter. We're not talking about White
Right,
Chicks.
right, right. But she's she did really good in that movie. Yeah, that movie kind of it's one of the few movies that actually made my spine tingle a little bit. Especially when the priest was accosted at 3 in the morning, the demon witching hour, and he does his Michael the Archangel protect me chant, and the demon passes. That was a scary part in it, and then she starts off in the barn and she's going crazy. But
I will say for the third one, what made it so good is it was a return. It was a return to the source because the writer who wrote the book, he's the screenplay writer, Blatty, William Peter Blatty, is so good. Should we hop into it?
yeah, let's do it.
All right. So we are picking up on chapter 6. This is when my synopsis for each chapter gets very short. So chapter 6, what I have written here, and did you write anything for him this time?
No,
Okay. I didn't want to step on your toes or
no,
anything.
you're good. I'm going to piggyback off of you
Okay.
for this.
Lord, let me get this closer to my face. Lord Henry breaks the news of the engagement to Basil, who is visibly jealous. Lord Henry tells him that the girl is better than good, that she is beautiful. Then comes in Dorian. Then comes in Dorian, who had just seen Sybil playing Rosalind in her boy's clothes, saying she had never seemed to him more exquisite. After the show, they had kissed for the first time. As the three discussed this, Basil, showing restraint and concern, but speaking as to not want to offend, Lord Henry espouses his nonsense, here telling one of his most major and many contradictions. He tells Dorian that women can't help but adore men like God statues, idolatry, but he here describes it like a nuisance. But later, telling Dorian that he wished he had the adoration of such a tragic girl. Dorian argues that women are the gold givers of life. Lord Henry tells Dorian, quote, I represent to you all the sins you have never had the courage to commit. The discussions come to an end, and the two leave Basil to himself. He sits in sadness, knowing that he has lost something with Dorian. So that's chapter 6. This is now the love is serious. I remember making note because it struck me as strange. Beyond just the Oscar Wilde homoerotic reference or anything that he might have been doing there, or playing around with it.
Mm-hmm.
That her coming out dressed as a boy was the most exquisite he had ever seen her. I don't know exactly what it was, but it definitely caught me. It made me think of a few things in the real world references uh, how we usually have women play Peter Pan. I
Right.
find that an interesting choice, but we
Right.
do, and that's pretty. It's like a almost like tradition, like
Yeah.
theatric tradition. It also made me think that in our first videos, I was talking about her being a potential archetype of sorts as a reference to Dorian's anima. And I was wondering, and I wonder if this was like a subconscious choice by Oscar to have her come out as a boy, because if we see her as a separate character and not an archetype for Dorian himself, or even an archetype for Oscar Wilde, stepping another layer back, like an Inception layer or whatever, you know what I mean?
Right.
That the reference of her coming out as a boy would be a revealing of her animus, her masculine side.
Right.
But I don't know exactly what it would mean, but it just struck me as as she comes out dressed like that and it's significant to him. I found it weird and I think that there's something there, but I didn't quite capture the magic on it, but I feel it brewing in my
Well,
mind.
there's a quote, the one that you just said, where that at the beginning when you were speaking. I represent all the things that you're scared to do,
Yeah.
basically. And there's another quote in that chapter where he says something to the effect that no civilized man regrets a pleasure, and no uncivilized man ever knows one.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that this was Wilde's way of saying, without saying, who he was.
Right.
That's my belief on it. And as you go through the book, and like we said last time, each character is from and of the mind of Oscar himself.
Right.
So he's revealed a part of himself in every one of these characters. I think that was a revelation. It's not as if back in those days you were running around telling everybody, and you know,
He was prosecuted for it. Yeah.
I think this was his way of being able to say to the world without saying to the world that that's what I am.
Yeah.
This is who I am. And I don't think, I don't think that he, in his own words, regretted the pleasures that he saw.
Probably not. No, right. He, if anything, I would imagine, at least in this time period, because I don't. His later life is a bit. It's odd. It's a strange thing, and I think it'd be cool to maybe if we find like a bio or something on him at some point.
I think yeah, because the man was he was a complete just the way he writes. This is probably one of the funnest books I've ever gone through, and I could go through it again and again.
Yeah.
He's his wordplay is genius. I mean, if he were a rapper today, oh my God, the stories he could tell. He
What I
could,
what
or
I
a
liked
musician.
what I liked about it, because you're right, it's phenomenal. The words, like it's very playful, it's very quick, rhythmic. There's no fat on it. It's a very thin book, for what it is. But what I love is it just feels like the mechanic. I would call it the mechanic of the portrait is so. It's something you see in a lot of great classic Gothic novels, and I love that shit. So like the Frankenstein, I think I mentioned it before, but the Frankenstein stuff, or the Invisible Man, or like Dracula. There's a mechanic to it that you can latch on quickly, and by what I mean by that is, for Frankenstein, it's the monster.
Right.
How he's made, what he's made of, it's unique into itself. There's nothing really quite like it before, and anything like it after is just a reference to the source. Same thing with the Invisible Man. There's not really anything quite like it in what it explores and the mechanic of the scientist approach to how he gets there and what it does to his mind. Dracula, same thing with the vampire. Vampires had been done. They existed in lore and in mythologies and stuff, but what Dracula did was captured something that would be an eternal reference of vampirism for an eternity. And I think that this story with the portrait, it's like it's the same thing, and it's so brilliant when a writer captures a mechanic, like lightning in a mechanical literature device, like lightning in a bottle,
Right.
and in this one to show vanity, is it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. It's so fun that it makes
The
you want to just read.
the monster is wrapped in beauty in this. It's
Mm-hmm.
not outwardly apparent like in Frankenstein or with Dracula or with
And they all have different meanings.
right, right.
They all have different references.
This guy again kind of based on the time period will represent probably how Wilde saw himself,
Mm-hmm.
or how he felt other people saw him. Beautiful on the outside, ugly on the inside,
Mm-hmm.
and destructive even, just like any other monster. Which is why I could understand why in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen they had him with Dr. Jekyll and Mr.
Yes.
Hyde, Dorian Gray, all of these other figures, the Invisible Man, but they had apparent issues that you could see right off Dorian's. You had to wait. It was a mystery behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the. Well, and I think that's what it is in this book. His monster is wrapped in beauty. It's like road to hell being paved in gold.
Thinking of it this way too. If each monster reveals its own sickness, Dorian, the portrait, as himself, that being a reflection of himself, is very mirrored. So it's very it's unique. As whereas the monster is a reflection for Dr. Frankenstein. I think Dr. Frankenstein's issue is many things. It's many things, but the beast is made of parts. He's made of parts because he's made a. To me, and I could be wrong about this. This is just my interpretation of it. Is it's like many mistakes that get put together and make one beast.
Yeah, yeah.
Ambition, his blinded ambition, his madness, his neglect of his bride, his wife, so those types of things. So like that's what that monster is, and I think that that's a good thing. If you read it, you could go, oh, I could apply this to my life. Something like, well, Dracula, he's a reference on plague, but in a deeper sense, he's also a reference on. There's references to like the history. Some people saw the story as a bit racy. I do think there's race conflict, but it's mostly about old conflict.
Yeah.
And I think Dracula sort of has reference to the plague because of this idea that the old conflict, you can't kill it. You gotta
It's funny how you
shove
reference
a stake in its heart.
It's funny how you reference it to pestilence,
Yeah.
the plague, because Dracula is also a very sexualized figure in just
Yeah.
about every single movie.
Very sexualized.
And
Yeah.
how do you disease? A lot of it that haunts
Spread it
men,
around.
They spread around through sex.
Yeah.
You know,
So each monster has its reference to an issue.
I wonder what the werewolf would be.
Oh,
Things done in the dark come out to the light, type of thing.
yeah. It has a bit of
Has a kind of a mimicry of Jekyll and Hyde.
I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
the beast within, blind rage. Oh, I'll have to think on that one more. But that's a good one. I think it's like that. Something in there.
Yeah.
Blind rage, the monster within, the untamable beast, different things. The reference to moonlight is interesting because lunatic, Luna, the moon.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't think about that. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
something there. But Dorian's is awesome and it's unique and it's a reference to himself.
And it's not easily visible.
Not easily visible. And like you said, the mechanism is the mystery, which is at the end.
Right.
It's so fun.
And yeah, when they find his body, he's just old, shriveled up
And it's awesome. It's awesome too. Well, let me
I can't
hold
remember
the.
the picture was completely intact. It was regular Dorian.
Yeah.
They switched completely places. Yeah.
I'm gonna write a reference when we get to the end.
Yeah.
Um, okay. And this is a fun question to ask about any fiction, but we'll get to it when we get to the end. Let's move through it. Then I'll get to the next one. Chapter 7. See if I can. All right. One day it'd be nice to have like a big ass monitor
Yeah.
where we could like pull crap up. Because I don't have great eyes. Okay. Huh?
You and me both.
Oh. um. Okay. All right. So now we're at the night of the show. Basil, Lord Henry, and Dorian anxious. Oh, I loved this part.
Yeah. This was Dorian at his. Oh, wow, at his most devilish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dorian anxiously waiting. The play starts, and finally out comes Juliet. They marvel at her beauty, but curiously, her performance is stunted and terribly awful, so much so that Basil and Lord Henry eventually leave. Dorian sits and watches in misery. He feels that his heart is breaking. All he truly ever loved about her was her acting. He goes backstage to tell her that she has broken his heart. She says that it is true life's love that has caused her to lose her ability to perform, that before it all seemed so real on stage because that was all that was ever real to her. But now she had a real Prince Charming, and and the stage pales in comparison to life. But Dorian says that his love has left him. She begs him and says she will perform good again someday, but he leaves her on the floor begging and crying. Dorian leaves, walking home as the sun comes up, contemplating his broken heart, his own cruelty, and the conflicting duel within himself. At home, he notices for the first time that his portrait has changed. Lines now appear around the mouth, a cruel, taunting smile.
Yes.
He then decides that his portrait will be his meter for morality.
Right.
He feels what he did to Sybil was too cruel. He steps outside, feels a bit of the lost love. He takes a step outside and then begins to feel a bit of that love that he lost returning to him. Or so he claims.
Right. This was this chapter, man. It was really it was gripping. The picture with the smirk, the fact that he woke up and put a screen in front of it. He didn't want to get out of bed. He finds out that Sybil has killed herself through Henry.
Yeah, he comes the next day.
Yeah, the next day. Yeah, it wakes him up, and he's Dorian has decided he's going to go back, profess his love,
Writes this whole letter.
writes the letter, and Henry's like, "My dear boy, I've been trying to get in touch with you all day. Don't you know? What do you mean you're going to marry her?
Yeah.
She's dead."
And of course he brings the news.
Yeah.
Of course
yeah.
he
I know
does.
he relished it.
It's like, man.
It's just the character of Henry to wanna do that. He seems to be the harbinger of bad things.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire book.
Now, as a thought experiment, and now I think Henry, of course, was the best choice to come and tell it. But as a thought experiment and as a thought in literature itself, as storytelling, imagine how much different the mood would have been if it was Basil. He probably would have been more comforting. He probably would have, maybe said things that would have put Dorian on a much different path.
Right.
And it's an interesting thing that you can, if you just imagine it for like a fleeting moment, you can already see there'd be a completely tonal difference if it was Basil than Henry. And that's how important it must be that it has to be Henry who comes in. Arguably, if it was Basil who came in, it could have been a moment to save Dorian. Because the letter, Basil would have had totally different, he probably would have said, let me read it, and he would have read it, and it would have changed. He could have nurtured that that feeling. But
he could have gone through some thought experiences, experiments with him, like, consider this, or what if this has happened? Make him consider these possibilities before he told him.
But we got the damn devil walking through the door.
Right, right. Um, so what is interesting about this chapter is how she died
Yeah.
and how it parallels with how Juliet dies.
Poison,
And
yeah.
that's who she was playing that night.
Hmm.
Um, uh, in this story, however, Romeo doesn't die.
Yeah.
Romeo is already his soul's being chipped away at, but she poisons herself in her dressing room.
But in some interesting way, does the potential of any kind of Romeo does kind of die.
Yeah, yeah,
Her fake Romeo dies, in a sense. She kept calling him Prince Charming.
right.
The imagine to from her perspective,
It was over.
Romeo is dead.
Yeah,
Because what is this thing in front of me now that's like, ugh, I don't love you. I mean, that must
and that was another
it's like
point I wanted to
reality
bring up.
killed him.
He was not in love with Sybil Vane. He
Right.
was in love with the idea of and the different characters of Sybil Vane, but it wasn't Sybil.
His love was vanity
Yeah,
also. It was
yeah.
vain also.
And like we brought up the last time when we talked about this, I wonder was her name a play
Right.
on the word, vanity. And I want to, go through the book and see are there any other little tidbits that Wilde put in there that would foreshadow, you know, because not only was his love based in vanity, she also died in vain.
Yeah.
It was it was completely unnecessary. Um, but his immature reaction to one bad night caused his downfall.
And I would
Caused her
say
downfall, rather.
the lesson in this chapter is similar. So I think it's perfect. He picked Romeo and Juliet. The lesson of Romeo and Juliet and the lesson that you could learn from this are the same. When you are young, well, you don't have to be young, but when you're experiencing those first romances where it's not, oh, I just like her, whatever, but your first like infatuations, in a psychological sense, what you love about that person is something you love about yourself.
Oh yeah,
It
absolutely.
it is you coming in touch with your anima, and your anima is projected then. Your ideal female is then projected onto that person
Right.
for a period of time. Over time, just like in this story, reality will come in, and then you will have a more real. If you pursue it, you can have a more real connection. Romeo and Juliet did not know each other, and Dorian and Sybil do not know each other.
No.
He knows her as smoke and shadows, characters on a stage.
Right.
She knew him as Prince Charming, characters that she had interacted with on the stage. His beauty is what she saw. Her talent is what he saw.
Right.
And like you said, her death is also vain. It also sounds extremely painful. I would just make note of that.
Well,
It's
I
just-
think
sounds horrible.
Yeah, terrible. But I think there's a bit of embarrassment
Sure,
because of her
embarrassment.
mother.
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
aspect of her father not being there, and what her brother told her.
Mm-hmm.
I think that she might have realized in those last moments that I should have listened to my brother.
Yeah.
This was the wrong path. But had she thought about it more, maybe she'd have lived. And I would have, if I was her brother or anyone, advised her to stay away from Dorian. Which I know she probably wouldn't do. It would make for a shitty story. But,
Yeah. Something else interesting too. I was thinking, even so, I understand Basil could have been motivated a little bit by jealousy, in a sense of what, like, okay,
well, Basil is clearly in love with Dorian.
yeah, but the question as to why he left, I find it hilarious in a way. When they both decided to leave, I wasn't stunned, but I was like, oh, they're okay.
Right.
It's that bad. If either one of us was single and you were like dating an actress and we go to the play, even if I know it's bad, I'm gonna stay. I just find their friendship so fucking fun. It's funny to me that these two guys are like, "This really sucks. We're getting out of here." I
Yeah,
find
yeah,
that to be like, "Whoa, dude, your friends suck."
yeah. That's true.
Even Basil in this situation sucks, and I see why they had to leave. You get your next scene. It also emphasizes how bad it
But I
was.
think Basil could see the pain on his on
Sure,
Dorian's face.
I just find it so funny, and it could have been interesting. I'm glad it didn't happen because then he has to confront Sybil. But it could have been interesting. It could have been a possibility that Basil would have wanted to stay for a twofold reason. One, because he is the more supportive character. He is the more empathetical character towards Dorian. And a little, but also the shallow, the infatuation that he has with Dorian.
Mhm.
It could have been a secret desire to stay to bear witness him falling out of love.
Yeah,
But he doesn't do this. He leaves. I just found that to be a little bit funny. And I think it also shows that these three characters, it's almost like a reminder, they're not that close.
it makes you wonder, did Oscar agonize over how to play this scene out? you know,
He probably messed around with it a little bit in his
yeah.
mind, at least.
I would like to see what his other, if he had notes, what were his other possibilities in this scene because it was a pivotal scene. You know,
There's a lot. There's a lot of moments, what you would call like these surprising reveals.
yeah,
The first surprising reveal is her performance. The next is his cruelty. The next is the hint of the portrait. If you didn't know the pop cultural references to the story the first time reading it, you don't know what's going to happen. You go, wait, what's going on with the painting?
right,
The first hints of a supernatural coming through
right.
would have been really, really exciting to have no reference to it whatsoever. Chapter 9.
Chapter 9. Yeah.
All right. This is another, they're getting shorter and shorter on me here. Basil has come to visit.
Chapter 9 or chapter 8?
Hang on. I might be on 8. Yeah, okay. So we reference this a little bit. Dorian
Oh,
wakes
okay.
late in the day. He gets up and does his routine, feeling that something tragic has taken place, but almost forgets what it was. I love that, by the way. Like, he totally, just the night before, went to this thing, but he wakes up like, la di da di da.
Right.
Like, what? And for being so dramatic.
I
Anyway,
think he was more embarrassed for in front of his friends than he was
yeah,
disappointed at Sybil's.
the vanity revealed.
Yeah, it's the vanity.
As if he was so shallow that even his broken engagement is merely trivial. Then he sees the painting and is reminded. Only his vanity can cause action within him. He writes an apology to Sybil, his first love letter. Dorian vows to do his proper duty, marry the girl. He also tells himself that he must never take the influence of Lord Henry, that he must attempt to return to the moral boy Basil once saw in him.
Yeah.
Later in the day, Lord Henry visits and tells Dorian that Sybil Vane has committed suicide by swallowing poison and dies in her green room. Dorian is stricken by how it nearly has no effect on him. Lord Henry seems only concerned of the potential scandal it could lead to, but Dorian assures him that that will not happen, as no one in the family ever even knew his name. Dorian feels, though, some guilt in murdering her, but Lord Henry helps to destroy any of those thoughts. He goes on to say, "Someone has killed herself for love of you. I wish that I had ever such an experience," showing that contradiction from earlier in chapter 6, when Lord Henry says that it would be annoying to have this type of infatuation from women.
Right.
Then goes on to tell his own story of how he neglected the love of another woman, and she never got over it. But she did not have the artistic passion enough to kill herself, though he wished that she had. Now, if they ever meet,
Yeah, he was so cold.
he is. He says now that whenever they meet, she bores him with reminiscing of the past.
Right.
Lord Henry tells Dorian to remember Sybil for her beauty, her beautiful tragedy, and forget the rest, to appreciate the art she has finally made. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah. He is demonic. But yeah, I mean, he comes wrapped in pretty flowers, though. Henry is the most one of the most interesting characters in this book, if not the most. Um, but Dorian sees that he murdered her. He feels that he murdered her by proxy, and he blames himself for the death. And here comes Lord Henry to say, and honestly, if delivered the right way, I don't see how Dorian could have not eaten this up. At least she died artfully and beautifully for you. For I have this one hanging around me that just bores me every time I see her.
Yeah.
you know, um,
It plays on the vulnerability that we have from Dorian in this moment, which is that vanity, the embarrassment.
right,
He offers him, just like the devil would offer you something. You don't have to feel embarrassed. You can almost be proud.
right,
You're so special. Somebody has killed themselves, and it's art. He makes
right.
he makes him see it as art.
Yeah, I am. Again, back to the quote in the beginning. I represent the all the things that you wish you could do. You know, that is, yeah, that is. Well, anyway, Dorian covers the picture up with a screen. He's decided he's going to use it as a moral gauge, and he was going to do right, but things don't work out that way. You can go on and to the later chapters and see what happens, but yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't work out that way.
Any final thoughts on that chapter?
Not really. It just, like I said, it just highlights what a poison Henry is. And Basil was right in chapter one when he said, "I don't want you to meet him.
Yeah.
You're gonna destroy him."
Yeah. And it makes me wonder. This is why I have the feeling they all must not know each other too well. Well, one, Dorian is just the painting client.
Right.
So the relationship must only be so many, however long that takes, so many weeks, so many months.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously Lord Henry's new to Dorian, but it's like, but if Basil knew at all what Lord Henry's potential was, he didn't fight very hard to not have him meet him. He just knew it would be a bad idea. But boy, Basil really dropped the ball on that one. Chapter 9. Basil has come to visit and brings pity to Dorian, but Dorian wants none of it, echoing the sentiments of Lord Henry. Basil is surprised by it and argues over Dorian's cruelty. But Dorian shuts him down successfully as Basil still loves Dorian too much to want to lose him. Basil then tells Dorian that the portrait is to be displayed publicly soon. This gives Dorian fear, as he has come to now accept that it reflects his cruel soul. He does not want anyone but himself to see his cruel, repressed secret. Um, oh, he had now, I don't know why I wrote it like that. I'll just read it as it is. He had now wanted to embrace that new hedonism that Lord Henry had described earlier. So to get Basil to not show it publicly, he gets Basil to admit the secret as to why he never wanted to show the art in public before. Basil admits his idolatry of the art and his passion for Dorian. Dorian felt it a strange confession, but accepted it as it kept his portrait safe from the public. After Basil leaves, Dorian describes that he must hide his portrait away, how he must hide his portrait away from everyone, and that it can no longer stay in this room covered by a sheet.
Right.
I think the most important part of this scene is the confession from Basil.
Basil, the homosexual attraction to
It-
Dorian.
I thought that Dorian's reaction to it was interesting. It's like a bit of surprise, but it's also a bit of he throws it away. It's so important to Basil But to Dorian, it's just
It's
a
a
quick
it's a
solution.
yeah. That's what I was gonna say. It's just a means to an end. Now I don't have to show the picture
Yeah,
because the anxiety and embarrassment that he'd feel.
yeah.
There's no way. So he has to lock the painting up. You know.
It's almost similar. It's not as tragic, but it has similar notes in the dynamic. Dorian is above Basil here, much like he would have been above Sybil. Sybil begs, and Dorian's like, you know, get out of my life type
Yeah.
thing. He doesn't do that to Basil, but Basil is not begging, but he is in the confession. He's lowering himself. He's humbling himself, not groveling, but he is getting lower, not physically, but
Yeah.
to himself. And to him, it's such a big deal. You know, you imagine, like, to me, it reminds me of the embarrassment of, like, the first rejection of, like, a middle school crush, you know?
And again, it's a illustration on how Dorian acts before he thinks.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, because again, giving the painting up might end all of this, the problems that he's having.
Yeah.
Especially knowing that the painting's going to change with every sin he commits, and it might have given him some accountability to practice a better morality.
And people seeing it.
But hiding it away, no one sees it. You know, if it really is a what's the word I'm looking for? It really is an illustration of how humans and sin work right now. As long as no one sees it, I'm okay to continue doing it.
Yeah.
You know, but if you were to display my sins in front of everyone, oh my God, will I clean up fast? And I think that it is a desire for every person. I think deep down they all want all of it to come out. Just freaking put it on display. I don't care. I want freedom.
Yeah.
You know, I want the truth to be out. Dorian had the chance right there, and he dismissed it.
A practice in confession.
Yeah,
He could have had the public see the painting, and maybe they would have. And it makes me wonder, what would they have seen? Would they have seen it? See, they don't see the original.
right.
And would they have noticed, or what would that have done to him? Would it have just gotten into his head that everyone sees it? It would have been interesting. I'm thinking of like an Oscar Wilde's. He had to hide his homosexuality. He's walking around. No one can see it.
Right.
And then did he ever have that feeling? Do they see it on me? Do
Oh,
they
yeah.
see it in my mannerisms? Do they see it? And could this have been the scene if Basil would have convinced Dorian, let's say, with a better argument to show it publicly? Would the public have actually have recognized it? I mean, over time, of course, they would have.
Well, I think
But
like
in the first instance,
like with most sins, I'm talking about venial sins. Most of the public probably wouldn't care, and it
right?
would have been a relief to Dorian. He probably would have declined to go any further with his little tirades or his rebellions to morality,
No.
but he didn't. And I think he thought that the public would be hard on him and on the painting, but I don't think they would have. I don't think they would have cared.
Now imagine, what if they would have loved it? What if it was spectacle? Let's check in on Dorian's portrait, see how he's coming along,
Oh man,
like the modern day OnlyFans or
right.
something.
There's there's nothing more sobering and will make a person do right than scrutiny by people around them. You know, it's kind of like people who get rid of all the alcohol in the house because their alcoholic family members coming over,
Yeah,
but it keeps him from sin. But deep in the back of his mind, he knows. I know these people drink.
yeah, right, right, right.
They just got rid of all alcohol because I'm here. You know, they don't trust me. Um, yeah, no, that's a good point. I like, but again, some authors some authors will leave notes about when they write books, and with different ideas that they were pitching. I would love to see where Wild was gonna go as opposed to where he ultimately went in this novel. Well, and
Right.
believe me, I don't want him to change any part of it, but
No,
it would
no.
be great to just see what his other thought experiences were, thought experiments were.
They're important to think about, I think. I like to think about them sometimes with a book like this because it just gets you to one, it really solidifies what it is.
Right.
It says it is this for a reason.
Yeah.
If it would have gone a different way, what would that have meant? And the fact that it doesn't is important. There is, however, I do want to get it at some point, that 2008 publication.
2000.
The 2008 like uncensored version. They had just found it recently.
Really?
Yeah.
I
They
had no
found the
idea it
manuscript,
existed.
and apparently it is more embracive of the homoerotic stuff. I want to read it to see what changes. Does what like how much more is in there? How does that change Basil? How does that change Dorian? Like what I don't even know
Well, I mean, based on the
what he would have
period,
dived into.
based on the period this was written, which is far, far before like a book like I don't know, Catcher in the Rye was written. I, and South Park spoofed this one time. It was so
Yeah,
funny because it
yeah.
was so true. We might read the manuscript and be like, well, this isn't really much more,
Right.
because I read Catcher in the Rye, I was like, Holden Caulfield is not special. This
Mm.
kid is not a profound thinker. He's a spoiled brat.
You know, on that note, and I do think these would be fun stories to do.
Yeah.
Have you read the Glass family stories?
No.
Okay. Okay. Well, my last note on the Dorian one, the reason I want to read it is I just want to see if the character dynamics
Yeah,
change at
I
all.
would love to see it. If you get that, we can go back and revisit this
Revisit.
just with the with those changes. I would love to see that.
So there are something that makes Catcher in the Rye better.
Hmm.
There's a fictional family.
Now, mind you, I haven't read Catcher in the Rye since about 12th grade. So,
Neither have I.
all right.
I read the Glass family books. I've read them more recently, and I've read them more. I love them so much that I've read them multiple times. They're really thin. There's Franny and Zoe. Franny and Zoe raise high the roof beams. Um, the one about Michael. No, raise high the roof beams is that. Okay, so there's a set of siblings, and basically each sibling has their own short story. One of the siblings has committed suicide. In the fictional world, he is the author of Catcher in the Rye.
Oh,
And what is revealed about the family reveals what Catcher in the Rye is.
and
And a lot of people haven't read those.
well, what is it? I mean, honestly, I want to know. Really, I do.
It's
That's a reference from the book, guys.
it's a struggle. It's a struggle with his aristocratic class, a struggle with his parents,
Yeah.
a frustration with his accomplishments, with his youth, because his name is Seymour. It's Seymour, Michael, Franny, Zoe. And you find out that he deeply, deeply, deeply loved his siblings, and he took care of them because there was a sort of a silver spoon neglect of his siblings.
Oh, okay.
But he made sure that they would be all right, and then he starts his own family. But he sees a repeating of what has happened to his siblings. He sees a sort of echoing of it in his own life. And as he gets older, he starts to feel a draining of meaning. And his attempt to write, when he was writing Catcher in the Rye, I think he was attempting to recapture the meaning, but it ended up just being him spiraling out. And then he kills himself. So then we learn about Michael and his brother. His brother went into the service. That's Raise High the Roof Beams. I think he gets stuck in this car. It's full of all these people he doesn't really know, and he's just come back from his brother's funeral, and it's all in his head. But all these people are talking about all their own shit, and the other stories are a contemplation on Seymour. What happened to Seymour? What happened? Why? What happened to him, and what's happening to me now? My favorite one is the Franny and Zoe stories, because we see that his little sister, she's been having panic attacks ever since he committed suicide.
Right.
She's going to school, and she's afraid of this newly discovered, because before her life was so easy. Her life was just money, streamline, education, She breaks up with her boyfriend. She has a panic attack, breaks up with him for no real reason. She just doesn't connect with him. She's afraid. She's afraid of her own mortality. All of a sudden, death is revealed to her. And she's like, I have to make decisions. I have to actually live life. I actually have to be active. I can't just be floating around doing my own thing. And then there's the brother, the young brother. It's, I don't want to get it wrong. I'm not even going to say the names because I Franny and Zoe in my head right now because I got them twisted. Franny, Zoe's the boy, Franny's the girl. If I have that wrong, blow me up in the comments, whatever. So the brother is a young actor. He's very handsome. But strangely enough, out of all the brothers, well, maybe Michael, but out of all the siblings, he's vain. He's very much like a Dorian-esque type character. Mm-hmm. But his philosophy is like the most sound. And he's getting there because he's always been so honest in his approach to his mother, especially you see a mother where he's in the bathtub, he's trying to read a script, trying to get his lines down. His mother comes in, she's complaining a lot.
Right.
She's talking about all this superficial stuff. Her son's just committed suicide, but they're not talking about it at all. But she's complaining about, you always shave and you never clean up the sink. It's always this, she's totally disassociating.
Right.
But the way he speaks to his mother is like honest and blunt. And he wants to cut into her to say, your son's dead.
Right.
It's bothering you right now. That's what's bothering you. It's not the sink. It's your son. So anyway, there's this beautiful scene. I love it. Michael and Seymour shared a bedroom.
Okay.
The sister just had a panic attack. The brother goes in to to his brother's rooms because he sees that she's not doing well. And he calls her on the phone. She knows it, and he knows it, obviously. He play acts being Seymour and talks to his sister so that she can gain closure. So anyway.
That's pretty deep.
They're amazing. They're really good.
I'm going to have to check those out. You said they're the Glass family.
Yeah, but you'll see them under the titles of Franny and Zoe. That's a collection. Raise High the Roof Beams is a collection with the Seymour story. I forget what the title is. Yeah. And then there's like whatever and 9 other stories or something like that. And they recontextualize the Catcher in the Rye because now you realize, the author is on the verge of committing suicide at some point.
Right.
And it just changes the flavor, changes some of the lines, changes some of the feeling of it. And it's like, yeah, he is kind of a ranting like baby type thing, but you also can see this is the spiral that anyone can slip into.
Right.
All of a sudden, all the little stuff really gets to you. All the annoyances and you start to judge things a little differently, more harshly. You know what I mean? So yes. It just changes the story, I think.
That'd be interesting to read that. We can move on to the next chapter real quick.
Okay. Let me go ahead and read this then. So, chapter 10. Dorian hides the painting away in an unused area of his home, a room which has a connection to his lonely childhood, his mother, and the hatred of Lord Kelso, a room he has neglected for the past 4 years. He locked the door. He felt safe. He did not want to care about the marring of his soul or to witness it come across the painting. As long as he had his youth, he felt safe. Later, Dorian had asked for something to read from Lord Henry. When he goes to his library, he sees a book bound in yellow paper, the cover slightly torn, and the edges soiled. With the book was a new clipping, was a news clipping on the death of Sybil, as if Lord Henry had to remind Dorian as to sell the contents of this book to remind him the importance of what he was about to read in the books. In the book, Lord Henry even marked the article of her suicide with a red pencil, showing another contradiction of his advice to forget it. And of course, Lord Henry does not want him to actually forget it, just to repress it and contain it within.
Right.
Hey, just like Lord Henry has done with his own bitterness.
Right.
I even have the information. I don't know if you ever had this on the Yellow Book is a real book.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
What is it about?
I got it here. The unnamed book is actually the 1884 novel Against Nature by J.K. Heisman.
We're doing chapter 10 right now, right?
Yeah. J.K. Heisman, a book about a decaying, eccentric, reclusive dandy who is the last of an aristocratic family, just as Dorian is. The character of that book loathes the 19th century bourgeoisie society and retreats into his own idealistic, artistic world, a world that is an illusion of extravagant fantasy. There, the character is alone, surrounded by art from a different time. It is a book about a character who indulges in decadence.
Oh, yeah. Central experiences. Yeah.
The
Dorian reads it for hours.
mhm.
Yeah.
The book has an obsessive tone over the material. Essentially, the book is a series of lists of art and types of art and value of art. Later, Dorian takes on this same tone and style by having lists of his own. And then I have a quote. His eyes fell on the yellow book that Lord Henry had sent him. What was it, he wondered. Taking up the volume, he flung himself into an armchair and began to turn over the leaves. After a few minutes, he became absorbed. It was the strangest book that he had ever read. The book is described as poison and written by either a saint or a sinner. Later, he visits Lord Henry late, taking on another attribute of his, showing up late to engagements.
Right, right.
I'm so sorry, Harry, he cried. But really, it is entirely your fault. That book you sent me was so fascinated me that I forgot how the time was going. Yes, I thought you would like it, replied his host, rising from his chair. I didn't say that I liked it, Harry. I said it fascinated me. Fascinated being the word that Basil used to describe Dorian as well.
Yeah.
That Dorian fascinated him.
Yeah. The yellow book you described.
Mm-hmm.
It, if it's a real book, it probably shaped the writing of this book.
Yeah.
Oscar
It's a
probably read
known. It's known that he read it and he commented on it.
Yeah, so it would be of no surprise with his own hedonistic search for pleasure that now I'm really convinced that Dorian is more of a reflection of Wilde than the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. But I would definitely like to get my hands on that book to see what it is.
Me too.
Yeah.
I actually was watching a review on it by a guy who was also reviewing Dorian, who helped me with doing this research to find out where to go,
Right.
like what avenues to head down. And he said it's a fascinating read. It's a very strange read.
It's plotless from what I'm seeing here. It's a
Yeah.
plotless book. It doesn't have any real direction except the hedonistic aspects of
Mm-hmm.
it. So, yeah, I would definitely like to read it. It'd probably give me a different understanding of what Wilde's mindset was when he wrote this book. It says it's a psychological study of a man who indulges in sensual experiences. Dorian was hypnotized reading it for hours, and he was late meeting Henry at the club for dinner. Yeah, also taking on another trait, like you stated, of Henry's. I wondered, will he eventually become as snappy as Henry? So I actually know, but maybe those of you who haven't read it wonder.
Chapter 11.
Yeah.
Okay. Years have passed, and Dorian could not shake the influence of that poisonous book. He even collects various prints of the book in various colors
Wow.
so that it may suit his mood better at any given time. He claims that the book contained the story of his own life, except the character in the book eventually has to avoid mirrors and shiny surfaces as to not see his aging face. This is something Dorian does not have to deal with, as he does not age. Rumors begin to creep through London about the evil deeds of Dorian Gray, but once people saw him again, it was as if the beauty rebuked them, and they were reminded of the purity of youth. Trust settled back in. That doesn't last, by the way.
Right.
The hidden away portrait was now scarred by age and by the corruption of his soul. Dorian now spends hours in the room, examining it, ever building in his love for his own youth. Here he has finally taken on a sort of vampirism. Dorian would attend church and read Darwin just to mock them.
Yeah.
He truly only accepted the worship of life itself. He practiced in studying perfumes, searching for the secrets of their mysteries and oils manufacturers instead of searching for the meaning in any doctrine or philosophy. He practiced in the psychology of perfumes and their various uses,
Yeah.
almost like a science of human nature and manipulation. He devoted himself to music and the aesthetic of instruments, which he collected from all over the world. He then studied jewels and collected those as well, spending days staring at them. He read the tragedies in history and in mythologies surrounding the jewels. After his long adventures, he began to dread leaving London, or even
Fear
leaving
that
his home,
for fear that people might see the painting.
and he disliked the idea of being away from his dreadful portrait.
Right. Even though rationally he knows that seeing the painting it could be explained away.
I think it was a good thing to put into the book because a thought experiment that a lot of people will go into, and because it's fun, it's a good conversation piece. But it's like the thing: what would you do if you had, immortality, that kind of stuff? And
Yeah.
I think it's a question that stories about like vampirism and stuff address really well, because you end up getting to the issue of immortality.
Right.
And I think here this gets to it as well. It's like he doesn't have to deal with aging. He should be going around traveling the world and sleeping with anybody of any color he wants, and
Right.
dabbling in any drug of any ritual and
Because it's not gonna harm him.
right.
And
He
also it shows that his dismissal of how his reputation has changed does show a little bit of that, because he knows, I think, innately he's become immortal. So what do the thoughts and reasonings of these people mean to me anymore? So
yeah, the scale starts to shift.
right.
It's like when your child, partially because they're emotionally unequipped, but also, if your child faces a scraped knee at 4, that might be one of the most painful things they've ever experienced up to that point.
Right.
You need a few more scraped knees.
By the time you're 18, you're rubbing mud in it.
Yeah. So then you get to the point like, who cares who says what?
Yeah.
None of it registers. You're
Yeah.
not even real almost.
Right.
I could imagine human beings probably become like 2-dimensional. And so that's, these stories they start hearing about him, like every household you ever visit just turns to tragedy.
Yeah.
To him, it's probably the only way to gain
And
excitement.
he's
Or
involved in these crimes and these street brawls and stuff like that. He's become almost I don't want to say a godlike figure, but
I'll tell you one thing.
what could I describe that as?
Well, one. I don't know exactly, but one thing he is doing for sure is he is doing what Lord Henry has. He's acting out Lord Henry's philosophy, which I don't think Lord Henry's ever quite acted out.
No, remember Lord Henry said himself that I just basically, and I'm paraphrasing, I just say these things. I don't remember half the things that I
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, and then like Basil has his one quote where he's like, you say terrible things, but you don't do them, or whatever,
Yeah.
however he says it.
Right.
But now here we have Dorian actually acting it out. What would he be like? What would be like a, because I don't know. It's like Satan acting on the world. It's like a vampire. It's he's like a
But what does Satan actually do? You know, outside of influencing people. You know,
right.
I
We're
mean
yeah,
that's
and we're past that level,
right.
right? Well, that's the Lord Henry level. Now we're like the like evil knocking at the door. I mean, he gets into these people's homes. Dorian comes into your life, and then all of a sudden your life goes to hell.
Right.
I don't know what he's like. You have a vain being, vain archetypal being comes in. He's like a disease in a sense. We talked about that with the vampirism thing, but it's different than that too. It's like you've invited in the dark triad, I guess,
Yeah.
into your own life. If you let Dorian in, I guess it's like he's now the catalyst of the Henry philosophy, the new hedonism. He is the catalyst, and if you let him in, because I imagine the lives that he ruins, he's ruining their life. The way in which their lives are being ruined is they're participating with him in whatever's going on.
But
I'm assuming
do you think that
it's women and stuff too.
do you think that Dorian is doing it intentionally and with purpose, or do you think that every life, like Sybil Vane's, he is ruining by proxy or by accident?
It must be a mix of both. I think over time, I think he starts to become more experienced in it. It seems like, anyway. Like I don't think he cares. I don't think he doesn't seem to ever come across as like a psycho, like planning it out.
No,
We don't ever get any sketchings of that. But
but opportunity shows
he must
itself.
be
He takes
having
advantage
fun.
of it.
Is he? I think he's enjoying himself, and yeah, an opportunity comes up, and it's indulge, 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 indulge. I mean, that's Henry's one consistency in his philosophy, right? If she wants to sleep with you, sleep with her.
Yeah,
If somebody brings drugs to the party, do the drugs. Um, whatever. If somebody hinted that there's going to be a bank robbery, hey, let's not just think about it. Let's do it. That kind of thing. I think that's sort of what he is, right? That must be. It's a missing part of the story, so a lot of it's up to your imagination. We just know that he's going in and out of these places, and we hear that some women have killed themselves. We hear that some women are in ruins, some relationships are in ruins, and people have lost money.
right.
We hear it like gossip. We don't actually get to witness. I think Basil is the one who really talks about most of it, right? I think
Yeah.
Basil tells him or asks him about it. Like every life you touch seems to go to hell.
And he examines his face on his portrait a lot more often. He's
Yeah.
going up and looking at it. He's looking at the changes.
And what's that?
See, that's another thing that kind of perplexed me. Like, is he doing it now to gauge his morality, or is he doing it now to see how much damage he can do to the painting? you know,
More damage
before he
done to the
couldn't look at it. He
Yeah.
put a screen up, but now he freaking peers at it constantly.
Yeah, doesn't even want to leave the country to be too far away.
Right.
Probably wants to constantly take a peek he'd probably go out at night and come right back that night, or maybe as soon as possible anyway, and be like, oh, a new wrinkle, a new cataract, like whatever. And yeah, well, the more ugly it gets, the more he probably feels secure in his own beauty. But but also, is there kind of like a masochism in that too?
It's definitely an obsession. I don't know if I would. Maybe it is. Maybe there is a little masochism in it, but like he enjoys the pain of watching that painting take on the scars of his life, his soul's scars. Uh, yeah, but there's definitely an obsession that grows, and I guess you could define some masochists as obsessed.
Is there a real world reflection of this? Because I know I keep myself up at night with all of my mistakes. My, like, if it's vanity or if it's stupidity or if it's just whatever embarrasses me or
Yeah.
makes me feel low, I
The
can't
things
stand
that
it.
make you cringe when you're alone.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't like it. It has to be addressed, but I wouldn't, like, let's say there was a painting of it. I wouldn't stare at the painting as a way to revel in it. I would stare at the painting as going, what do we do about
Maybe
this?
it was because with it happening to the painting, he doesn't feel the embarrassment and no one else sees
Oh,
it.
yeah, yeah.
You know what
So
I mean? So right
would
now
you
we
just,
have to see it in our mind's eyes. We have to reflect on it, and we every time we see a memory in our mind's eyes, we literally relive it.
yeah, and then the emotion triggers. So he's
Yeah.
not getting that.
So he's not getting it because it's happening to the painting. So it's more of a objective observance to him, like, hmm, that caused this, this caused that. You know?
Ooh, maybe a slight metaphor to disassociation then.
Yeah,
Maybe,
yeah.
you know.
That'd be yeah for sure. Um, and he can't correct because he can't feel it. you
Yeah.
know, we correct based on our morality and the uh, the embarrassment that we get when we do certain things. He can't course correct.
He can't course correct and he doesn't, there's nothing to motivate it. No emotion to motivate it. Chapter 12 is a short one, as far as my summary. 38th 38th birthday, walking home from Henry's and to go to Basil's. He's beginning to feel fear, and it's a foggy night. Like he's sort of paranoid on this walk. It's a strange thing. He's starting to get a little dodgy. They go into the library. He tells him that, or Basil tells Dorian that he's been hearing the rumors around London. This is where Basil runs into him, kind of out of the fog and coincidence, and they haven't seen each other really much in a while. So Basil starts to ask him about what he's been hearing. Stories of heartbroken boys who have committed suicide, girls who were left hollowed out by a lack of love. Basil tells him that everyone he becomes friends with loses their honor and morality, that they have gone down into the depths where Dorian has led them. So that's pretty much that. I'm going to go to 13. Dorian takes Basil to see his soul, his portrait.
Right.
This is
Yeah, he leads him up there to check it out.
as Basil is struck with horror by what he sees in the portrait,
Right.
knowing it to be Dorian and it to be his own art. Dorian plays with a flower, which is a callback to the garden scene in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
Pretends to smell it and then crush it. Pretends, that's important. It does mention that he doesn't actually smell the thing, he just goes through the action of smelling it. Then crushes it in his hand and explains his secret to Basil, as Basil had done years ago to Dorian. This is his confession scene. In that
He documents all of his sins.
in that attempt to conceal his secret a little longer, Dorian puts the blame onto Basil for revealing to him his beauty and for introducing him to Lord Henry. This is all your fault, essentially.
That is definitely a valid accusation. Per
The-
me.
There, for sure, there's definitely everyone has a role to play.
Yeah.
Basil is ashamed by his idolatry, seeing now that he worships something akin to the devil. Basil then begs Dorian to pray with him, which is interesting. But Dorian says it is too late, and it makes me wonder: is it too late? Basil cries that they have both been punished. I'm sorry, for worshiping Dorian. Dorian then gets the urge to kill Basil, and of course, he's practiced this philosophy, so he learned not to suppress his urges and takes a knife off of the mantle and stab Basil behind the ear, which I thought, when they described that, I was like, that sounds god awful.
Yeah.
What a place to do that to
Right.
somebody. um, I can almost imagine the pop of it and everything. It's very, ugh.
And it's such a oddly tender spot right
Yeah, it's like
behind
the one spot you
mastoid
can get.
process there. It would wow.
And then he smashes his head onto the table and then stabs him multiple times. And then after, he feels almost nothing.
I wonder what the picture looks like.
Yeah, we like watch it in real time.
Do you remember that scene in Young Frankenstein where
Oh, yeah,
While
yeah, yeah.
the picture
It
smiles.
changes.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
changes the portrait.
man, that movie
Oh, it's one
is
of the
fucking
best.
awesome.
It's one of the best.
So here we have murder. I think because we don't hear about murder before, we just hear about the suicides and stuff. So we've really gone to the next level with what Dorian's capable of. He does it to Basil. Basil is punished for his sins, and
Why the ear?
why the ear? Yeah,
It's like a
uh,
Tyler Durden line. Why the ear, man?
and it's in there. It's described as the first stab, and so he's probably basically already going. I think
Yeah.
it does mention a struggle, but there's no. I don't think there's any coming back from that.
No.
So the rest of it is just play, which is twisted. Because it's like I don't think we should imagine this as an angry thing. Not necessarily. I mean, there's probably some passion involved as far as
He's probably disassociated from it. He's probably just doing it
right. That's how I think it's
almost
going.
mechanically.
That's how I think it's going.
And I guarantee you, his first glance was back at the photo or at the painting.
Oh, for sure. As soon as he's done
Yeah.
with the knife in hand, just seeing what's changed, what's
Yeah.
gone on.
Yeah. Just, I wonder what this would do.
And poor Basil, because I know Basil has made mistakes, and the book warns against the mistakes that Basil has made. But Basil hasn't quite acted out. He's actually had quite a lot of restraint in his sins, and I don't know if Oscar sees that as a mistake. I think there's other ways to go about it, but in general, if we were to just follow just the book timeline of Basil, all he really does, as, I mean, physically, like how he acts everything out, is he obsesses in the mind, which can be poison,
Right.
and some of that poison gets into the painting. But really, he doesn't take too many like actions that compromise Dorian or himself. He practices restraint. I think what ultimately ends up destroying him is his own shame. Let's say the scene in the attic and the confession of Dorian is like, let's say we're to switch the perspective of who our catalyst is, like
Right.
who our subconscious catalyst is, or whatever you want to call it, like our I don't know how to, whoever our Virgil is, our guide into the subconscious. If we just take the perspective that it's Basil in this scene, that this would be the way to improvement is to kill a little of yourself in a
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
That maybe it's a little bit of that the that if Basil was Oscar.
That's what I was going to say. I can see that in reference to Oscar.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Oscar killed Basil off as a metaphor for what he might have to do in his own real life.
Right.
That part of him had to go, but it wasn't protective, and it wasn't
was
necessarily useful.
It was repressive, right?
Yeah.
Repression.
So, but
Suppression.
Henry and Dorian are useful personalities for a guy like Wilde.
Yeah.
They're protective, and if those personalities were manifest in Wilde's outside world, he probably would have been able to better defend himself, or play off the accusations of which he was eventually prosecuted for. But in real life, I don't think he killed off the Basil part of his
No.
mind.
And I think maybe that's why it comes off as a bit tragic.
Yeah.
We feel bad for Basil. He's messed up, but he's kind of pathetic.
Right. Yes.
And we're all like,
yeah,
oh.
yeah.
And maybe that's something that maybe this,
In this Lord of the Rings, he's Piggy.
yeah, it would
I
be
mean, Lord of the Flies, he's Piggy.
it would be sad to lose your own Basil. It would be much better to sit down with your own Basil and talk it out. And that's all that Basil probably needed in this whole story. Whatever repression or suppressions that we're dealing with, instead of doing you know what it is? It's like when you're acting out, when you're laying in bed and you're going, oh, Why did I say it like that?
Right.
We're being Basil a little bit, I
Yeah.
think. A little bit of that character, whatever that archetype is. Next one. Okay. Really short one here. Chapter 14. Dorian Gray blackmails Alan Campbell to assist him in taking care of the body. The exact nature that the blackmail takes is not very clear, nor is it clear exactly how he disposes of the body. I found this part to be really interesting because there's not much Alan. There's no like Alan Campbell, nothing. You know what I mean? There's no build up to him. He's like, I need you, man. And then he does whatever he does, cleans up the room like perfectly. I'm assuming Alan Campbell is a part of the all the nasty deeds that Dorian's been off running around and doing. They must have him compromised to some degree. I don't know if you have anything on that chapter, but
Well, I can't remember Campbell. Was he the servant?
he's some kind of scientist guy that he invites over.
Okay.
Dorian kind of plays with him a little bit, like, "Ooh, I've got something for you, and you got to come look at it," and blah blah blah. And he's always kind of nervous the whole time because I think he knows what Dorian is.
Well,
Takes him up in the attic, and then he sees Basil, and he has some expertise in like chemicals. I don't remember his actual
I
occupation.
think
He's like a
Campbell
scientist.
might have been blackmailed with um, maybe him and Dorian had a tryst.
Yeah, could have been.
Yeah. Maybe him and Dorian had a tryst, and that that getting out is what Dorian used to hold over his head so
Hmm.
that he would help him out. Yeah. Okay. The scientist. I do remember him.
It's such a strange introduction, but it's very interesting, and it kind of also lets me think. I bet Dorian's got many people like this, that resources all over the place
Yeah.
for
Because
various needs.
you do forget that he is a rich person.
Hmm. Yeah, he's rich. He's
Yeah.
probably compromised and blackmailed a lot of people.
Right.
So, chapter 15, Dorian is at a party with Lady, I don't know how to pronounce Navarro. It's a small party. Dorian goes into an active denial about what he had done, seeing his hands as too beautiful to have ever really held the knife. Dorian regrets coming to the small party he now sees as tedious, but Lord Henry comes to the party, and he sees Dorian and wonders what is upsetting him. During the party, similar to the lunch at Lord Henry's aunt's years ago, Lord Henry entertains Lady Navarro with his philosophies as they relate to an affair. This time, though, Dorian is more than just present and a captive audience. He has his own philosophies and ideas that he interjects. He is now a member of the immoral high society that sees people as playthings of life. After some talk, Dorian seems to be feeling better, and Henry asks him about a loveless affair he is having with a married woman. Dorian talks about her and her husband with such disdain, it's as if the affair is an inconvenience to him. Dorian becomes upset again, and Lord Henry comments on it, and Dorian brushes it off as being just him just being tired. They agree to meet later. As Dorian goes home, he seems to be haunted by the death of Basil. My phone's dying, so do you mind if I just brush through these?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just give it a
No.
a final push.
But that him being him having anxiety about the death of Basil would go in the face of what we spoke about in chapter, I think it was 11, where he didn't have any emotion.
But not at the time, right?
Yeah.
It's similar to the rumors.
So it's reflective.
The
It's
rumors,
more in the moment.
yeah, the rumors didn't bother him in the beginning and then it also shows that the people at first the rumors it's like at first he can enter a room and then everyone will re-engage with him because his beauty
Hmm.
makes them trust him. But then eventually, as that same chapter goes, then it describes too where people will leave if Dorian comes in a room. Then they start leaving because they're like now they kind of get familiar with his poison. And I mentioned it before, but that's sort of what goes on. And it doesn't bother him at first, but then there's that one night that he's walking in the fog, and it starts to creep into his head a little bit. But then, thankfully, he runs into Basil, and then Basil, I forget what he wanted to see the painting. I think right. I forget what other task was going on. I think it was just that. that he was just a happened to run across him. And anyway, so he brings him up and kills him, and then he goes to the party, and he's all moody and shit, but he doesn't. It's almost like things are slowly starting to get to him because obviously we have a rising in action, just normal stare, story structure. But I would still argue that I almost bet that Dorian wasn't too emotionally inflicted in the moment of Basil's death. I would still stand by that, even though it's bothering him now.
All right. Yeah, that's just because in that chapter, that's when he starts talking about he's anxious about it, and he starts to feel uneasiness about killing Basil.
Have you read Crime and Punishment?
I have it over there.
I think what we're dealing with is that sort of thing. The guy does his little practice kill before getting to the
Oh,
old lady,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
then it
Crime and
starts to.
Punishment.
Then at first he's fine with it, kind of, not really, but he thinks he will be, and then over time he gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I think here we're getting a similar thing. It's like you can't quite really get away with it without it coming eventually. Your consciousness will start to bubble up
Oh,
and
that's
get to
true.
you.
That's true.
Okay, so
I wonder
Chip,
what it is about consciousness that makes that. You know, I wonder if it is that we're civilized in this way based on the moral background of our society. What is it about the conscious and subconscious that doing something that is deemed bad will just gnaw at you until you can't hold it down anymore? Even have physical, even give you be detriment to your physical
health,
health. You know,
aneurysms and shit,
yeah,
and ulcers and
yeah. You know what is that? You know,
blood pressure.
yeah.
Can affect how your sugar levels and stuff.
Hmm.
I have an answer
I
that
mean, because wouldn't you see consciousness? It's not physical.
I don't believe it's physical at
No,
all.
it's medical. So, but it affects the physical so hard. You know.
Well, yeah, I got an idea
Okay.
that I spend most of my time thinking about this. So to me, and you know this, and I've probably mentioned it here a little bit, but I don't. For the audience to really understand it,
Right.
you know how Dawkins said Peterson is drunk on symbols.
Yes.
I'm drunk on narrative.
Yeah.
But this is why I truly, truly believe. Okay, let me just see the most succinct way I can say this without blabbering on too much, because I can get lost in this train of thought. Okay, our sense of morality, I think, is both learned and inherent,
Hmm.
and I think as we experience more of our own personal narrative, it is a guide to make certain choices in our story. Now, I think the reason human beings, because think of this, animals don't write books, animals don't tell stories. We do. We are wired like this. We are wired for pattern. We're wired for narrative. Another book. It's not.
And every story is part of a stream of pattern.
Yeah, just like a radio wave.
Yeah.
Some people will find it mundane and scientific that human beings are able to tap into the natural waves of this planet to communicate from one mountaintop to another.
Right.
But I can tell you what, when I was a radio operator in the Marine Corps,
Yeah.
I found something sort of magical about it. Not the way in which it happened, but the way in which humans were able to recognize patterns so well that we've even been able to create devices to find the invisible patterns, and we use them to talk. And I find that to be such a beautiful thing about what this world is, that this world actually quite literally has music in it,
Right.
that vibrations have. When two people lay next to each other, their hearts become synced.
Yeah.
When a child is born, you need skin-to-skin contact. You need vibrations. You need touch.
Right.
You need attention. You need pressure. You need food, which is there's a big giant ball of energy
Right.
sending little photons and waves crashing into this planet, causing energy to grow into plants. Cows will come by, eat them. We kill the cow. That energy transfers into us, and somehow it's enough energy for this consciousness to engine out. I mean, I find it all to be very much. It is very much about patterns.
Yeah.
We're pattern creatures. That's how we're designed that way. It's how we survive. Because if you don't know the patterns, then you never say, "Hey, you know what? This is when the cheetah comes." You know, because you need the patterns to say this is where the cheetahs are, this is where the snakes are,
Right.
this is where the berries grow,
Right.
this is what the fish do, so I can spear the fish. But I need them for you need them for so much more than that.
I guess what I would say is, will you still see the same effects of conscious thought, negative thought, for example, in lower forms of life
To what?
that have the effect physically that it has on humans? I'm not
Well,
talking
yeah,
about,
yeah. So I do think, yeah, maybe.
you think so?
What
Okay.
happens when you trap an orca? You know, they become depressed and
Oh yeah, yeah.
their fin
I
bends
don't know
over.
anything about that. But
Or
it has to be based on their sense of morality, right? Because when you watch those videos of the orangutans or the little monkeys stealing stuff, they don't. It's not theft to them. You
no,
know.
and it's because, well, think of it. What they need, let's call it morality, what pattern they need to fall in line with isn't going to match every other being.
Right.
The cheetah, if the cheetah could never murder, the cheetah will die.
Right. Right.
If I never murder, I won't die. I could never murder. I don't need it.
Yeah.
I got another pattern I have to fall in line with. Not only that, but humans are more complex. I find animals tend to be a little bit more
Yeah.
streamlined into
Right.
their patterns. Human beings come with, like, for instance, my inherent morality is not the same as the inherent morality of some dude in China. So we have geographical differences, biological differences, cultural time, what time period we're
Yeah.
born in. We have all these different things, and I think that if you like, let's just take a scientific approach to it, or a scientific way of thinking would be you could probably track behavior in an evolutionary sense. Say, well, what was acceptable back 100 years ago is shifted, and that ideas and morals and ethics and norms evolve to hopefully increase the potential of survival. I think it's a little deeper than that, though.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I have no evidence for what I'm about to say, but I truly believe that it is somewhere close to whatever the truth is.
Okay.
Yeah, I think consciousness is not fed from this three-dimensional plane. I have a feeling that the engine of consciousness is sort of in some cosmological, some other kind of. I mean, as a religious person, I think God is the source of consciousness, but
Right.
you could give it another name. But to me, to have all these people digging for it and not finding out where does it come from biologically, I just think it's because it's kind of we're kind of in between. So back to the story point that I was trying to make. The human brain, the human, not even the brain, the human spirit, let's say, the animating thing has to feed you, is not feeding, it's responding to the environment, responding to the actions based on a set of patterns. And I think this might be the answer as to why when you read more and you're exposed to more, you're more exposed to how life plays out in a pattern.
Right.
And depending on your personality, you're going to make different decisions, and you're going to have different feelings and responses to those decisions. You're going to make new choices.
Right.
But you're a character. You know, you're a real human, you're a real soul, you're a real thing, but ultimately you're kind of a real character that has to make choices. If you didn't feel anything, you couldn't make those choices, and none of this would work.
Right.
I think it's pattern recognition. I think it's story recognition.
And that's why you've always said that even if humanity started over from scratch, there'd be another Macbeth, just not called Macbeth, probably.
Yeah,
Pattern
because
recognition,
yeah.
pattern storytelling.
It's
And the
because
stories all take the same route, no matter where. No, no matter where they come from or what civilization, they always travel the same road. It seems like.
Right. There's different sets of them,
Hmm.
but I can tell you that I know that there's for each story that's successful and long lasting, there are typically 23 um, 23 distinct moments in each story that have a set, like let's say you would write um, sequence one, you'd have A, B, C, D, E possibilities, but
Right.
they're all relatively the same. The difference is did the character go left or right? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the difference.
Right.
But they all pretty much have them. 23, 24. Usually, if there's too many, people will claim that the story is too slow. If there's too few, people will say the story doesn't have much going on.
Right.
And so you will find that the pattern matches, let's say, the pattern of Harry Potter is can be analyzed in a similar fashion as Macbeth, even though we have a huge cultural difference, a huge gap of time, like all these differences, but they still respond, human beings still respond to them because that's how life is. I think life is a series of these things. That's why I like when Jordan Peterson says, find out what myth you're in.
That would be, I don't think I've ever heard him say that.
You haven't?
Find out what myth you're in.
Yeah, find out what myth you're living in. That's how you can start making your decisions.
Hmm.
And it'll change from time to time. For a while, you're kind of you might be in a Job. For a while, you might be in your own Macbeth.
I think I have heard him describe this. I just don't think I had it put that way. Find out what myth you're living.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, are you living in a tragedy or comedy?
And that's going to be time period specific.
It can switch up.
Like you said, it can switch.
Yeah.
Oh.
If you ever find yourself being vain, think of this book.
Yeah.
Am I being a little bit of a Lord Henry right now? Or am I being a little bit of a Basil? Am I being a little bit of a Dorian? Or am I even being a little bit of a Sybil? Whatever.
Yeah.
I think in my youth, I can actually think of quite a few distinct moments where I'm like, yeah, I was kind of a Sybil. I was kind of infatuated with beauty and longing for something that I didn't even know what it was. I've definitely done that for sure.
I think I've probably been closer accused of Henry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My high school, junior, senior year, a lot of Henry going on.
Yeah.
I started manipulating. You ever see the movie O,
Yes.
based on Othello?
Yeah.
That psycho kid,
Yeah.
that's basically what I was doing my junior, senior year.
Huh.
Very fucked up stuff. I was manipulating relationships, fights. I was lying to people. It's like once I figured out that was like even a possibility, I went a little off the rails with it. Really, really bad. You know how bad this is? How crazy this is?
Well, I guess maybe not every archetype in that book would fit it. I don't know who I was in high school anymore.
Well, we only
I
got
kind of felt invisible.
we only got a handful here, and there's so many more that
there's so many
exist.
more.
This is a really just quick thing
Yeah.
but I find it interesting. I've always wondered about this, and I think back on it, and it's so crazy. So I moved from Michigan to Indiana,
Right.
and I had a rough go at it on my first year. Terribly bullied. It was awful, and physically, you know what I mean. And then because of that, I was so stressed, I completely disengaged. I wasn't doing any of my work, and so I failed. Then I ended up in a new grade. I ended up in a new class, a group of students,
Right.
and moved to a new building. So the first sixth grade was in one building, and then I moved to another building, and the next time that I had to do it. And all of a sudden, I could restart, and I became quite popular as far as middle school stuff goes. Girls started becoming interested in me, and this is something because in fifth grade, everything fifth grade and before, there was no interest in girls yet. It kind of only just started bubbling up.
Right.
But now, I should have been a seventh grader. Now it's starting to kick in, and they're having interest, and then all of a sudden I start becoming popular. Fast forward, this maintains. I stay a relatively popular kid.
Mm-hmm.
I also started to become a bit of a class clown. Very goofy, always wanted to make people laugh, and very, at this point, still kind hearted.
Right.
Now, I get to high school. As soon as I become a freshman, the grade above me, we're reintegrated. Is these people who fucked with me.
Right.
I had been separated all the way through because of the buildings.
Right.
And now it starts happening again. But now I have people to back me.
Right.
And I start becoming fucking cruel again. Not
Uh,
only that, I literally made an entirely new personality. I adopted my nickname, which was Dirk, because of misunderstanding. People call me Dirk, which is the most douchebaggy. Sorry if your name's Dirk, but it's a very douchebag name. And
not if it ends with Diggler.
as soon as I got to school, I took my glasses off
Yeah.
because it caused a degree of separation. I couldn't see people clearly.
Right.
I also felt like this was a like a soft,
Yeah.
dorky thing,
Yeah.
and I became a bad. Not physically. I didn't hurt people. I didn't
Right.
fight people, but I fucked with them bad.
Nah.
I would if I had an enemy, I'd be talking to their girlfriend's ears. I'd be talking to their friends. I'd be sowing the seeds of yeah,
I
just all
don't think
sorts of
I was.
nasty shit.
I don't think junior high wasn't something that I got to experience on a regular basis. I was homeschooled through the majority of it.
Hmm.
Fast forward to high school, and whether it be summer or winter, um, whether it was heat or frigid cold, I wore the same giant green or jean jacket,
Yeah.
and it was huge. And my mom would buy me nice clothes. No one ever saw them because I covered them up. I was very frail, and like I said, unassuming, kind of tall, but like I said, it was more like invisible
Hmm.
to most of the people around me. Cruelty was never really when I was younger, absolutely, but once I got into high school, it was never really a thought. Um, be it maybe because the when I got into high school, I was in a pretty fragile physical state, so I had to use wit and comedy to avoid fights,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, as much as possible. Um, yeah, because didn't want to end up back in the hospital again. Um, but it became a part of my personality permanently. It was like a survival instinct that never really went away. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, and I guess if there was anything that I did do, um, that that might have been, I don't think it was really cruel or unusual, but I chased girls
Hmm.
constantly. You know, even if I had a girlfriend, I was chasing other
Yeah.
girls. You know what I mean? And that was like how I got my satisfaction or validation.
I thought about that a lot more than I actually practiced that. I dated pretty much the same girl from eighth grade all the way until I was a little less than a year in the Marine Corps,
Yeah. Well, the
with some breaks in between.
well, eighth grade was so. I met a girl in what would have been my seventh grade year. I met her in school um, before I was hospitalized. She's a little sweetheart. I won't say her name. She ended up passing my freshman year. Um, so there was no constant. She was constant throughout junior high because she would check in on me. Her group of friends were very sweet. They would check in on me, call me after surgeries, or call me at my house, see how I was doing. And even every now and again, her and her sister would pick me up, take me to Walmart, take me out to a park or something like that. Um, but after she passed, there was maybe one other girl that I dealt with, and that one ended funny. I have to tell you about it one day.
All right.
And then there was the one that I ultimately ended up having a kid by, but I don't. Upon reflection, it just wasn't. I don't. I don't think it was something I was ever really into. You know what I mean? Um, I think it was more of a show than than reality. Um, Hate to say it, won't name any of you people off, but
Well, on the last note of mine, I'm glad I joined the Marine Corps because it gave me a confidence that superseded the need for that cruelty. That cruelty was a defense mechanism.
yeah.
Um,
Mine was when I was younger. When I was young, I was pretty mean. I dropped one of my cousins out a 2-story window.
Woo. Whoa. I think the worst I did was I one time like donkey kicked my little brother who was like a toddler into the closet doors
Yeah,
and it all collapsed.
yeah,
It was kind of bad,
yeah.
but not 2-story window bad.
My dad caught him. And me and him, he's older than me. We used to fight back and forth all the time. He would whoop my ass, and I'd sneak up behind him and put my fingers in his cheeks and
Oh
pull
yeah.
until they
Yep.
split down the fucking front.
Yeah.
We snuck fought each other a lot, and then being in the Northgate projects and Collinsville, Illinois, when I was a little boy, it's right outside of St. Louis. The the There was bullies there, and so it went from running, hiding, and crying to okay, fuck it, let's fight.
Yeah.
You know,
Me and my brother Ryan used to fight pretty violently, like what you're saying,
yeah,
gouging and stuff. One time he got me good. He pinned me down, so he's sitting on my chest. So like I'm, I'm like between his legs, and he's got his two knees here, and
yeah,
he said bite my knee and I'll let you out. And I was like no. He's like bite my knee and I'll let you out. So I bit his knee and he fucking jammed it into my freaking mouth. I was like holy crap, dude,
right.
it fucking hurt. Anyway, I'm gonna rush through these last ones, and this should be
Yeah,
the end of it.
let's go.
Did I have him heading home? Remembers Lord Henry's words. So chapter 16, I'll just read it. While Dorian is headed home, feeling glum, he remembered Lord Henry's words on their first meeting to cure the soul by means of the senses, and uh, and the senses by means of the soul. And so he takes himself to an opium den. Along the way, he suffers from the pangs of paranoia. At a bar, he runs into a woman who refers to him as Prince Charming, and it triggers anger in him. She calls him the devil's bargain. On his way home, he is attacked and grabbed by none other than James Vane. He had been informed of who Dorian was by a woman who almost seems to be a ghost of Sybil. But once James has a hold of Dorian, Dorian cries out, asking, "How could I be the one that you're looking for? For 18 years you've been searching. Look at my face." James realizes that Dorian looks far too young to be who he is after. Lets go of him, and the woman enters the alley where James sits alone. Basically, she disappears. Um, oh no! Before she disappears, she asks, "Why didn't you kill the man?" And he says, "It was the wrong man." And she says, "That is in fact the Prince Charming who ruined her, and he must trust her." He turns to see if Dorian is still near. He's disappointed, and he finds out that he's gone. And when he turns to speak to the woman, she too has vanished. Chapter 17, grazing over. Dorian tells the Duchess that Henry is never wrong, that he is not in search for happiness, but is in search for pleasure. During this gathering, we see that James Vane has been following Dorian. This is like that weird hunting gathering to see if he is truly the man that he is searching for. And seeing James's face in the window, Dorian faints. It's like he doesn't believe he's there. It's like he's being haunted almost by a ghost. It is as if yeah, that's what I just wrote there. Okay. Dorian tells himself, this chapter 18, tells himself that the face was just a phantom of guilt, and he struggles with what this means to his philosophy. Like, how can I start feeling these things now? Dorian begins showing his paranoia more and more, and everyone notices, and he tells them that he feels a tragedy is coming for them, or maybe for himself. He becomes jumpy to all the strangers entering the room, anyone entering a room. Later, when alone, upstairs in his own room, Dorian Gray is laying on his sofa with terror in every tingling fiber of his body. Life has suddenly become too hideous a burden for him to bear. Later, he decides he must leave the country home that they're all staying at. He writes a letter to Lord Henry announcing his departure when a servant comes in and tells him that someone has died. At first, he believes that it may be Lord Henry, but then he learns that it was James Vance who was shot during a hunting accident on the property. Chapter 19. Dorian tells Henry he has done too much bad and intends to be a good man now. Henry, of course, mocks all of these attempts to be good. Dorian confesses that he actually did love Sybil, which I don't actually believe, but
No,
he
I don't
says it
think he
anyway.
does.
I think it's just the guilt, all this
Right.
piling up crap on him. Dorian also mentions that he has found, or that he was fond of Basil, and hints at his murder, to which Lord Henry also scoffs at. Dorian expresses his realization, oops, that his soul does exist, but again, Henry insults this idea. Chapter 20. Get a list of the dead and all the bad deeds, and then eventually all this
Because he
leads.
ordered James's death, right?
Huh?
He ordered James's death.
Oh, like from the paranoia of this person on property, because he
Yeah.
doesn't know
Because
what.
a guy was shooting at a rabbit or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he shot James. Yeah.
Um. Then we get him stabbing the picture with the very knife that killed Basil, destroying the portrait. When they find the body, it is wrinkled and withered.
Right.
The portrait is as they remembered it, young and beautiful. The only one untouched seems to be Henry, as far as who lives and all that. Henry just,
And I'm sure he thought it all was beautiful art.
oh, I bet he loved every second of it. So that's the picture of Dorian Gray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it is a good read. I recommend everybody read this book. Oscar Wilde is a genius. The story is nonstop action, and there's a lot of lessons in it. And this is one where, honestly, Henry, being a bad guy, if you like the stories where the bad guys win, he wins.
He definitely does win. It is a tragic ending. Um, oh, by the way, our live chat is absolutely saturated with that one guy.
Oh yeah.
All right. Let's see what he's got. Let's see if it's good. He says read 200 economic books, study mathematics and computer science. Perfect. He says he has dual degrees in it. That's awesome.
That's
I've
cool.
read every book of philosophy you've referenced and much, much more, including all the Platonic works and the Christian works. Okay.
That's good.
Eckhart. After reading all of this, I found three things. Two, all of worldly wisdom is foolish. I wouldn't say that because your Bible. Anyway, the book. The people who write these books are all addicted villains who deceive and confuse on purpose to be revered and praised. He says he actually likes Douglas Adams. It's a contradiction. If you think reading propaganda books will help you gain insight to places you've never been, seen, or not, boy, I've traveled this globe 2 times.
Yeah.
I've traveled this
Just about
globe in
everywhere.
full 2 times. I've been everywhere. I mean, I've gone whatever. No book will help you gain insight to the places you've never been, seen, or known. Then you're stuck in virtual reality villains crafted. True villains of the world were the friends we thought we made along the way. The chastic structures of the Odyssey are great, and that portion of the story, by the way, I'd recommend looking at the emphasis in the Greek. My favorite part of the Odyssey. How do you like the Odyssey if it's written by Homer, a mortal man? Why does he get a pass, but none of these other books do?
Well, like I said earlier, I'm not going to condemn the man as he
He's
does
sick.
us.
He is sick.
As he does us. I'm glad that he's interacting and he likes the Odyssey. So, and it is a great book. There's nothing wrong with what he calls worldly knowledge. I mean, one of the first things that we were tasked to do when we were put on this planet by our God was to name and categorize all the animals, um, that would be considered worldly knowledge. And one of the continuing themes throughout the Bible that you see is get wisdom. You know, um, and one of the things that I tell my kids all the time is to, in order to be able to recognize your enemies, you have to know them, you have to study them, and if you don't, then you'll never recognize them. And um, it is it would be a disservice to not um, study and prepare for the possibilities of running into people who would do you harm. Um, so I would disagree about the worldly knowledge thing. And as far as economics books or philosophy books, I've read quite a few. I don't want to brag or say how many or what I've read. Uh, Suffice it to say, it's enough, and there will be a lot more in my future. I don't know who you are. I don't know whether what you're saying is real or not. All I can do is take you at your word. And if you are that educated, then that's even better for you. Hopefully, you'll find your way out of the situation that you were in much quicker.
Yeah, I'm good. I just read through basically every comment. He's very up and down.
Yeah.
Um, I think that there's a troubled mind.
Mm.
I'm not the type of person who's going to reject the world.
Yeah.
God put me in this world.
Right.
There is a mission that a human life has to one discover and then enact.
Mm.
And if I cannot read the thoughts that have long since passed, um, then I just don't see the point. In fact, I reject that completely because we must engage in dialogue with one another.
You do.
When you read, you're engaging with dialogue.
Yeah. And a lot of these people aren't around, so it's
They're,
kind of like um, what was his name? He wrote the book How to Read a Book. It was called, his name is what is his name? But anyway, he said that the you reading a book of an author who's no longer around, it's still an intimate conversation between you and the author because you're reading, you're asking questions, you're annotating, your dog earing the pages, and the you're asking questions and you're researching to try to figure out the author's thought processes.
Also, this is another important thing, and this will be a difference that you would find um, in different faith systems. I won't reject um, or be terrified of Oscar Wilde because he's a homosexual. I'm
Yeah,
not afraid to read him.
yeah,
Um, uh, I can recognize and have whatever opinion of Oscar Wilde I want to, but here in what we're doing, it has no place, no reference as far as what I think about homosexuality. I don't have to discuss that to
right.
discuss the book because what we're
No,
trying to analyze is Oscar Wilde wrote this,
right?
and yet the story we still find useful. We still find it profound. One of the things that he asks in the comments is, "Well, you say beautiful, you say this, you say that. What do you actually mean? Elaborate." We have 6 hours
Mm,
on this book. We have elaborated.
yeah,
And then he also had mentioned that you spend too much time on the narrative itself. Look, 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 look. We discuss the narrative and then we discuss the connections.
right.
That's the elaboration. Why? How is it that we find this book to be compelling? And you have heard the reasons. These are the reasons. Oscar Wilde is a sinner. Well, I'm a sinner.
Yeah.
I suck in cancer into my lungs every single day.
Well,
I do not care for my temple plenty enough every single day.
and not only that, these things aren't unique to us. David was a sinner.
Mm-hmm.
All right, he had the husband of a woman he wanted to bed killed, and God mentions David as a man after his own heart. We can't We no one sin greater than the next. We've all heard that, but we can't dismiss people uh, because of a sin they've committed. Um, just outright. You want these people to become reconciled with God again.
Hmm.
So pushing them away would be completely
Does one man on the cross not get forgiven?
right. Yeah, yeah,
Right? It happens. And so you must, if you want to draw reference on that,
yeah.
you must actually read it and must actually understand it.
Right,
I don't give a damn about degrees, by the way.
right. Now, school for us, for me in particular, was 30 years ago. College, well,
Yeah.
20 years ago, college. I doubt if they even teach the same things in the same way anymore. Um, the 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 points that he's given from authority because he has degrees, they're meaningless to me unless they're um, unless it's a STEM field and my life is on the line and I need a doctor or an engineer or something
Well, I
like
can tell
that.
you one thing
But when
too
it
is,
comes to philosophy, I don't care.
well, his degree clearly did not teach him to not go through life without being offended.
Yeah,
It's simple enough.
yeah, and
It's simple enough. I mean, love, like if
yeah,
you have agapic love,
right,
then if you have agapic love, and then you also, like, let's say you're a faithful Christian and you feel like you have the protection of God,
yeah,
maybe if you feel so sensitive or afraid of something like the picture of Dorian Gray,
right,
make a small prayer, then crack open the book.
right, right,
Because you're going to go about this world. You can't be wrapped up in bubble wrap. It is dangerous.
right.
People will insult, assault, murder, rape. It's out there.
And I'm not reading certain books because I love these authors or I love this ideology. I'm not. Um,
Do you not have Communist
oh
Manifesto or?
yeah, I don't agree with
Yeah,
Marx, but I
yeah,
have him up here. I
exactly.
don't agree with Vladimir Lenin, but I have several of his books. Saul Alinsky, don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but I have his book. Definitely don't agree with Adolf Hitler, but I would be a fool and remiss not to read him
Hmm.
and understand so that I could see him coming again if it became if it was at all possible or someone like him. Um, you have to be able to recognize these things. You can't live in the ignorance of the evil that might beset you
Hmm.
if you and God helps those who helps themselves, right? So if he is to teach my hands to war, like he said, then that's just not about physical fighting. It's about mental also.
Hmm.
And reading these books just reinforces my belief in the Bible and and my belief that this world is wicked and it keeps me from falling into the traps of the wicked because I get to see how they were set in the past, and that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, yeah. I like that. I like that quite a bit. You should.
You have to read your enemies. You have to read these things.
Yeah.
The devil's not gonna come to you and fucking fire and brimstone. He's gonna come to you with a
What
smile,
What
like
was
a
the
friend.
weakness of Dorian?
Yeah,
But his ignorance.
yeah. It was his
Lord
ignorance,
Lord
man.
Henry's
That's true.
garbage philosophy
Yeah,
overtook his mind because he had nothing inside of him
one hundred
to
percent.
protect
Yeah,
himself.
yeah. He
He had
had
no Bible.
no.
He had no philosophy. He
There
had no
was no books to
no
reference good and evil at all.
nothing of his own. No life experience. Nothing.
Hmm.
And so, can another human being of sin not write a fiction with revelations in it? I think that you are ignorant to think otherwise. Um, Absolutely. And going back to the life experience thing, my life has been quite full, and I'm still
Yeah.
quite young.
Right.
I've been around the world.
Right.
I've been in an unjust war. I've been in communist countries. I've
Yeah.
been in free countries.
Yeah.
I've been in countries where I don't understand what anyone's saying.
Right.
I've seen ancient buildings,
Yes.
castles, really, Romania,
Yeah.
and I've had many, many experiences I've dabbled in many sins. I've I've messed around in a lot of darkness. It's like that
Yeah.
one song where I think it's Dave Matthews. No, was it Dave Matthews or was it like U2? He talks about dancing around with the devil.
Yeah.
Done a lot of that. You know what I mean? All this stuff.
But I would definitely
I also lived in my car too,
yeah. I've been there
so I
when I was
sympathize with
younger.
that.
My in the snow in
Hmm.
freaking Missouri and Illinois. From coming from university in Minnesota, man, it was a cold winter.
I think this is another one of those moments to refer to our title.
Yeah.
Think before you speak.
Yeah.
Stop judging people. I hope you get some help because I do think you're suffering from a mental illness of some kind, a depression or something. I'm not sure what, but you should really take it easy and learn some love because you need it, man. I read your comments and you're up and down and up and down. It's like you honestly, you're probably like a manic depressive or something.
If you're going to continue to comment, that's fine. I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. If you want to comment productively on the books or on the philosophies that we go over, these aren't our philosophies we're examining. We're examining other philosophies here. Then yeah, you have something constructive to say about it. Absolutely, let's engage. But if you want to assume that you're the only person who's world traveled or well
The
read,
only person who understands the Bible,
yeah, the only
apparently.
person who understands anything.
Hey, you know what? Screw Saint Maximus.
Yeah,
I'm gonna listen to this guy.
yeah, what's the
Forget
point?
forget the rabbis.
Yeah,
Forget the church fathers.
yeah. The I don't like to make assumptions, so I'm not going to say that you have any inherent issues, but I definitely feel like you're paying a lot of attention to us unnecessarily, and I think your thought pattern in regards to what we're doing is misguided. Maybe with some dialogue, we could like what you're doing in the comments right now, we could probably fix that. Go. We could probably fix that, but unless you're willing to have that conversation, it probably won't work.
Oh,
What do you think, Derek? Is he still going?
I don't know. I don't. Why did you guys stop living out of your cars? I got a career. Um, I was living in my car while I was living in LA going to film school. And I ended up getting a place after I got work.
I became a father. I could not have my daughter living in that situation or see her father living in that situation. I was a college student anyway. Um, I got a job. I got the necessary help, and yeah, that's pretty much why it stopped. And it wasn't very comfortable, to be honest with you.
He said the Bible is not of the world; it is of God. Yes, I
Yeah,
also
100% agree.
believe that. My point was uh, the men who were tapped into to write.
Mm.
Does God not have a relationship with other men? Did you not too on your channel say that you wanted to write? Should your philosophies be dismissed?
What would be the point of your writing if no one should read it?
So my point of it being of this world meant this. The book is made of paper. That paper is of this world. I believe God enters this world. Please understand that. Right? When a person, let me explain it this way. This is a philosophy that you can find through Matthew Pajot. He's a Orthodox Christian. Earth is dead. Earth is nothingness. Heaven comes down onto earth and informs its essence. The creation of Genesis, the essence touching the dead and bringing it to life, is why when I look at a cup, I see a cup. I don't necessarily have to see just the handle, just the chalice, the print on the cup. When I see the table, I don't have to just see the tabletop and all of its little pieces, and then the leg and all of its little pieces, and be cognizant of the screws. It is the reason why a stool and a stump can both be a chair, as well as a beanbag. The essence is informed through the heaven coming down and touching that which is dead, which is the earth. The human being is a mediator, a conscious being created in the image, with consciousness being the image, the divinity being the consciousness, seeing the item, and then reflecting back in a reciprocal understanding. The cup informs me that it is a cup. I make the cup a cup. To me, the cup is a cup because of what I can do with it. It is a prop to my narrative.
Right.
This is Christian philosophy. That cup is of the earth. It is heaven, though, which explains this cup. It is heaven that brings the essence of the cup.
Yeah.
A book is not just pieces of paper. It is not just particles. So when I said that the book is of the earth, I wanted you to understand that God comes into this earth. There's a participation of creation. I had mentioned in one of the comments before, what is the first task that Adam is given?
To name the animals.
To name the animals.
Yeah.
This
Categorize them.
is a practice of logos, of logic. It is not a sin to philosophize it, to think. Human beings are not.
It would be a sin against God not to think.
Exactly.
That's why he who wrestles with God, you're going to feel yourself questioning and pulling. Your faith is what keeps you with God, but you are going to be
Struggle.
You're going to struggle. You're going to be given tasks by God. You're going to be given trials by God, and you're going to question why. But ultimately, it's God who's running the show, but it's not a sin for you to say why. Even Job went down that road. And none of us, I don't know you, but I haven't lost what Job lost,
Right. And so I want to kind of go into the idea of get behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
I will read the Communist Manifesto, get behind me, Satan.
Right.
I will read Mein Kampf.
Yeah.
Get behind me, Satan.
Yes.
I will.
And the thing is that the Communist Manifesto and even Mein Kampf are filled with good intentions, things to make everything better. They sound real good, but in practice, they're terrible.
Oh, he says he's read it already. You've read Matthew Pajot? No one's assuming the Bible is wrong, and no one is saying not to reject the material. Obviously, you have to dispense with it at some point, but you have to understand that you're here to fulfill what will come to revelation. You must live. You have no other option.
Right.
When you wake up, you must eat. You must sleep. You must interact with the physical. Dialogos is something you must do. You must talk to other human beings. You will go insane if you don't communicate.
Right.
Communicating with you, someone in which I have agapic love and friendship love with,
Absolutely.
is not much different than I have love for Oscar Wilde. That is a human being. He was created in the image of God. He had something to say. He might not have always said it perfectly, but I love
Might
him.
have done though. the right thing, but even Peter denied Christ.
God,
You
God,
know,
God will decide what to do with
that
him.
makes Peter no less. You
If
know, even Paul was a persecutor of Christians. It didn't make Paul any less. He was still called upon to be the greatest apostle. Um, and you can go through all of the followers of Christ and see these frailties in their nature. Um, doesn't mean that we should reject them. Oscar Wilde had his issues, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he was an eloquent writer with masterfully placed ideas in this particular book about this singular subject.
so, he says, sorry, the heart's in the way, so I can't. It's hard to see the full comment.
Mm,
Sure, I love the guy. I want him to get to heaven with something. I'm sorry, the heart's in the way. Want everyone to get to heaven,
right.
but I burn up his works and find his wisdom foolish.
Who was that? Whose wisdom? We're talking about Wilde or we're talking about
Oh,
Piaget?
get to heaven with him.
Oh,
Okay. See, this is where me and you. This is where we differ. This is where the differing of ideas comes in.
right.
Um, yeah, I'm not sure why it is either. So I don't want to burn his works because I don't fear his works.
Right.
Again, get behind me, Satan. I don't fear his works, and I don't fear other. I don't feel like I would have to control his works to make sure that no one else ever reads them to get rid of this spirit of evil. Let's say.
You have to believe in the divine providence and protection from God.
Well,
If
also he may be dead, but we should not silence him.
no, no, not at all.
You,
Because if you get rid of everything that is quote unquote bad,
hmm
then no one has an example of what the hell is bad. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? You need to be able to see this so you know what not to do.
I've got a great example of this. John Adams and the Sedition Act. The Sedition Act was unconstitutional, enacted by our second president, who was alive during the write-up of the Constitution and argued for it.
Hmm.
And so quickly after, we're already trampling on it. We're already making
Oh
mistakes.
yeah.
John Adams, I think, was a great president, but he's already making mistakes. The
Oh,
Sedition Act was that if anyone criticized the government, you would spend time in prison and pay a $150 fine. Then, at the same, he didn't come up with the act, but he signed it. The Senate came up with it. Mind you, the Senate was full of people who wrote the Constitution.
right.
Now, the other act was the Aliens Act. That was to get rid of any French Americans in the country that might have been deemed a threat
Right.
because of the potential war that we would have had with Napoleon Bonaparte. Now, fast forward, we learned lessons from John Adams
Yeah.
because we read John Adams. Another president comes along who had fought communism inside of the country, later becomes president, Ronald Reagan, and says we should not fear communism within our country.
No, as a matter of fact, where one of the things that reading about communism and communist and totalitarian government has showed me is that I see it creeping here, and I see a lot of people who don't recognize it or look at it as something benevolent that's going to help the people. It's not, and I wouldn't recognize it if I hadn't read it. And these people have not, and if they have, they just accept it. They want it. You know, there's no way that I would ever, eh, after seeing the signs of something that looks collectivist or communist, support it. I can't.
Um, if you can't find wisdom in the story, then I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel sad for you.
What,
I don't.
what Dorian Gray has shown me each time I've read it was to be aware of vanity and don't practice it. You know, among other things, but that seems to be the biggest thing. Um, and if I,
Huh.
what,
He
what,
says he wouldn't burn it up physically. He just means and my phone's about to die, so I'm going to lose contact with you. Um, but to expose how worthless it is, I don't find it worthless at all. But maintaining the same arguments. Let
no,
me ask you guys this: something to say aloud so the other can hear as well. You have so many hours to read and know so much. Actually, I know that I know nothing. I'm.
Right. Yeah.
Do you believe all ideas are equal, or could be better or more refined? And if so, isn't it important to burn up the less so there is the greater? Okay, I actually, um, I actually have an answer for this. And use your time better.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's what he said. Use your time better. There
Well,
are, there are.
there's a lot of hours in the day, man, and this is something that we do once a week, and I don't see anything that I could use my time better after I've
Well,
spent time with my kids, my wife, and I've worked.
and the question would be too: is it a waste of time to read? What makes us choose the picture of Dorian Gray over something else?
Hmm.
Now, I like this question. I think this is a very good question.
Yeah.
I do think there is a hierarchy of ideas. I think that you could never begin to understand what that hierarchy could potentially be if you don't just you you have to jump in.
Hmm.
You have to get into it. The thing is, me and Thomas don't claim to know much.
Right.
We like to talk about ideas. There's nothing wrong with that. This is not a vanity project. Out of all the things that could potentially be known, I know that I know nothing. I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah.
But I like discussing these ideas because I've had life has been a bitch,
Yeah. And
and I want to live it better.
I don't know how old you are. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking? If you could put that in the chat, because I feel like I'm quite a bit older.
So to continue this
Go
thought
ahead.
process, I will rule out certain literature that I will not read.
Mhm.
I'm going to answer this before I look at more. I'll just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, sorry, lost my train of thought. So yeah, there is a hierarchy of ideas. I also think there's a hierarchy of literature.
Right.
I put the Bible at the top. I don't see
Exactly.
it as mere literature, but it
Right.
is the top.
Right.
And I do know that God is trying to reveal the nature of reality through the narrative structure. That
Yes.
is why he put his word into such a structure.
That is why Jesus spoke in parables. He
If
knew
you
that we understood story better than we understood anything.
Yeah, and if you let's say human beings didn't understand story, you could not write history.
Right.
It would be impossible to write
Yeah,
history.
it was programmed into us.
Programmed into you. It's the way God made you, right? It's the way he spoke to us, it's the way he delivers his message to us. Then going down the hierarchy of narrative,
Hmm.
you will move into, and it gets difficult. It's difficult to analyze. It's not a perfect system, but you have to make your best judgments.
Right.
One form of criteria that you can make is if something is stuck with us, where even people who have never read the subject know of it, you can say that might be important. That might be worth taking a look at. Why is it that a book from 1750 BC is still being read today? That's something to take a look at.
Right.
Fairy tales. Why are we still telling these very strange stories? So you take a look at it.
Right.
I'm not offended if some college professor regards some book as important, like The Picture of Dorian Gray, but I'm not reading this because of college professors, because
No.
I never went to college, so no one ever in that sphere told me it was important. But why are all these movies being made of it? Why are all these TV shows made of it? Thomas brought it up. He enjoyed the prose. I read it. I enjoy the prose. I recognize the brilliance of his prose because it has amazing meter. It has incredible wordplay, ironies, contradictions by Henry, which we have talked about, the Henryisms that we found hilarious and devilish. And so we where would this story be ranked? Well, it would be ranked lower on the scale of
Yeah.
contemporary fiction.
Again,
It's not super. It's
it's
not.
it's an exercise, and it's a thought exercise. It's trying to find what Derek would call, or Peterson would call, archetypal patterns.
Exactly.
In these narratives. I mean, the next story, if you don't like Dorian Gray, depending on what book we choose next, you may or may not like it. You may hate it. But we're not doing it based on a like or a hate. We're doing it based on whether whether or not we can gain anything positive from those narratives or learn something that we should stay away from. In this case of the picture of Dorian Gray, it would be vanity.
So yeah, that's so me and him, we both agree. How do we spend our time? Well, like you said, spend it with family. We
Yeah.
read a lot.
Yeah.
We read even that which might not be. I've read. You know what? You know what happens if I open a book and I don't engage with it? I stop reading that book and put it away.
Yeah.
I did not stop reading this book. I'm not afraid of it. I don't want to metaphorically even burn it up. I do think that Oscar Wilde has some wisdom.
Yeah.
Did he do many unwise things?
No,
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And so I think actually from his mistakes is what we learn from this book, at least in part. We should analyze each other. We should speak with one another. Oscar Wilde is here in this book,
I wonder
at least to some degree.
I wonder what he'd throw out, or would he call, and if it was a standalone story, the story of Samson and Delilah.
I'm wondering about any story, to be honest, at this point.
Well, that one, you know, it was
Gilgamesh.
Gilgamesh, yeah.
Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
What all?
Absolutely.
What is
other-
kept? What is not?
Right.
And based on what?
Yeah.
And why should?
At some point, it becomes subjective, right? It's just
It
like,
is.
it's your
It is.
your personal feelings about it. I don't think as a faith base, it would make Christianity stronger in my eyes as a Christian to get rid of any books. Now, my time
Yes.
that I spent in countries that were religious autocracies, finding books that weren't specific to and promoting that faith was very hard to do. And those people are locked in, you know. I would argue that Christians and Christianity can thrive because we know what the truth is, and we're able to read other sources to know what not to do, other things.
Okay, here we go, and I'm going to end it shortly after this because it is getting tedious. Good argument, but like Socrates says, "I know nothing" is to second guess what you assume. It's actually nah. No, it's more than that.
His quote is, "I'm the wisest man in the world, for I know nothing."
Why do you believe in the archetype, or that you have to put history into a specific narrative? Okay,
Well,
humans wrote history for much longer than we have been messing around with fiction. You actually wouldn't know that. You don't know that for sure because
Yeah.
let me tell you this. Can I jump in on this and then I'll let you?
Yeah, go ahead, because I was going to say that does he see the Sumerian text as nonfiction? You know,
But
do
yeah.
you see the Hindu Sanskrit scripts as like the Narayana? Do you see that as nonfiction? And that's 7,000 years old. I mean, where does fiction start for you?
So here's our point with history. What we are saying is human beings are designed. So, for instance, you tell me the story of your life. What did I just say?
You tell me the story of your life.
Story. Key word.
Yeah.
I ask you, Thomas, how was your day? You're not going to tell me every minute bullcrap piece of information. I
No. It was
put
either
my
good
left
or
foot on the
bad.
ground.
Yeah.
I put my right foot on the ground. I
Yeah.
bent my knees into an upward position.
Lifted my arms, stretched and yawned.
You're not going to tell me all this.
No.
You're going to find intuitively, almost magically, all of the moments in which that matter that will string together, even if you're a bad storyteller, a narrative, a story. It's not fiction.
Right.
You didn't have to write a book to do it,
Right.
but you did it.
Yeah.
Because that's the way that your brain works. That's the way your mind works. When Oscar Wilde sat down and wrote this book, some of the ideas were his own,
Right.
it seems, and some of the ideas came from deep within.
Yeah.
Now, if I were to take this loose, mistaken Socratic interpretation of what the story of what was going on when he said that I knew nothing, it's not about second guessing. In fact, it's not even about second guessing. Not at all. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying second guess what you know. He is
that
saying
the more he knows, the more he knows he doesn't know.
exactly.
So it's kind of like if you look at a circle, small one, like a circumference like this. You know what's inside. You're aware of what the circle touches, the border, and then outside you're not aware of at all. But as your knowledge grows, so does more and more of the thing that so does you're aware and you know more, but so is what you don't know. It also is growing.
The more wisdom obtained, the more defined the questions.
Right.
It goes from being like this. You're searching your house for your keys.
Hmm.
Okay? But you're in your neighbor's house. And your keys are not in your neighbor's house.
No.
This is not about second guessing.
No.
This is about getting your ass out of your neighbor's house and going into your house.
Mm.
If you don't know that you're in your neighbor's house, what do? Right? You must first then discover I'm in my neighbor's house.
Right.
And then I have to walk my ass across the street and get into my house. You've refined the question through wisdom.
Right.
Where are the keys? Right. Then the next question might be, where are the normal places in which I leave my keys?
Yes.
Okay? You must know that normal pattern in which where do I potentially leave my keys? Do I leave my keys in the tank on the back of my toilet?
Did I leave it in the ignition? Did I leave them in my jacket pocket?
Well, the reason I propose the other one is it's absurd.
Because it's absurd. Yeah, it's an absurdity. You didn't.
And so when you obtain wisdom, you start to realize, my God, out of all the things in which could be known,
right.
I know nothing.
Yeah. And it's kind of like what we were talking about when we were saying reading certain things, not because we enjoy it, but because we have to know and recognize. I'm not going to see a despotic character rise and point out every single thing he did that makes him a despot. I'm going to instinctively know based on the things that I've studied that this is a despot.
You've created access points.
Yeah, it's not something that I would have to think out for a very long time. It's something that I read enough that I could just recognize it.
But then on the other hand, too, did we not ask questions in the analysis?
Yeah.
We're not sitting here thinking, oh, we're so wise, we're smarter than this guy over here. What we're doing simply, we're not trying to tell, we're doing the opposite. You seem to be taking on the role of, I'm much smarter than you guys. I've read this, I've done this, whatever. So why do this? At least that's how a lot of the comments have come across. We're not trying to play the game of we're so wise, we're so wise, we're so wise. We like the subject. We want to explore the subject. And it's about that exploration of knowledge. When what me and Thomas are doing here is we're trying to sharpen each other's knives. We have an interest, a love of stories. Both of us, we share this. We love reading. We enjoy it. It's a character trait. It's a gift from God. And you'll say, we've become familiar with each other's tastes. So you say, check this out, read this.
Yeah,
and we bring joy to one another. And would I say that that's a valuable time spent? I would say yes, absolutely.
Absolutely is, man.
I'm here with my friend.
Yeah, we met.
Child of God here.
Yeah, we met, and we for a while we didn't chat, but then we started to chat, and we realized we were more alike than we were different. Yeah. We had a lot of similar interest, and one thing that we really connected on was he is a big fan of Jung. I am a big fan of Nietzsche. Not because Nietzsche said God's dead or anything like that, but I love his analyzing the way he analyzed the not the what do you call it? The nihilist personality of the human race, especially that of Western society, and how he pretty much predicted the wars that we had in the early 1900s and what they would eventually lead to. It makes me want to know what he knew and what he saw that made him able to see these things.
Right. That's a good point. That's something I like about Jung too, because I know a little bit of his history from the what is it, the memoir book called Thoughts, Dreams, and something like that. Whatever the title is exactly. You see him go from a faithful young man to kind of like thinking himself to be an atheist, but then he realizes he's not an atheist.
Right.
Then he goes on the journey to rediscover his soul, and he struggles with that because he's scared for a while.
Yeah.
And all the while doing this, he's having these intuitive flashes of insight.
Right.
He's an intellectual man. God gave him the grace of a beautiful brain.
Yeah.
And I do believe I'm trying to stick with the language of this guy so he understands us better without so much harshness.
Right.
That gift was given to Young because God wanted him to use it. And one of the things that Young goes through is when he writes his Red Book is he rediscovers God. And one of the most beautiful things, I think you see this in an interview when he's an old man, and he's not perfect. He didn't always. I don't agree with all the stuff that he wrote in the Red Book. I think some of the stuff he said about God is a misstep.
Mhm.
His own thoughts or his own thoughts of his dreams mixing with the cosmology of Christianity. It gets a little twisted. It does for all of us. That's why I said earlier when I was espousing my philosophy theory on consciousness,
Right.
I said I have no basis for this.
Right.
I was
No,
not
we
taught
don't.
that in a church.
No.
I just had an intuitive thought, and I thought I would express it here.
I wanted to say what you were doing that is fourth dimensional, and that's why we can't. We can we perceive through it, but we can't perceive it.
Hmm.
If that makes sense.
It does make sense. That's why I wanted to mention the radio waves
Yeah.
and our tools and to discover them. Um,
And thank God for the ability for the discoveries that we have made.
and there's a reason for that,
Yeah.
right?
Thank God for that.
We live in a discoverable existence
Right.
because it's like
And again, God wanted us to do this. He gave that to Adam as his first task.
it's his first task. The categorization, logic, yeah. The scientific pursuit was a Christian pursuit.
Yeah.
Find the thumbprint of God.
Yeah.
It is the participation with God that is important. You must work the land.
Yeah.
Does that mean you just grow crops? No. Everyone's got a task to perform, and it's going to be various things. Some people are going to be doctors. Some people are going to cure the ill. We're not trying to play, God necessarily. If you're just the clinic guy, you're just giving the kid a checkup. You know what I mean? So there's a role to play, and that's one of the roles. The final thought on this.
Well, I like I said, I don't make assumptions. Your very first post were they could have been perceived as harsh.
Oh, they were harsh. I don't
Yeah.
think that there's. I'm
Yeah,
not.
absolutely.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
discredit myself. I read. I'll read them again.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that it takes time to feel people out.
Oh, sure.
I'm not I'm not jump the gun judgmental. All right, that's just not my style. And by the way, that seems like kind of a veiled apology, I guess. But yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and as far as the conversation today, no, it hasn't seemed to be particularly harsh, but those first messages that you sent were pretty, they were pretty deep. The
Well, yeah. So the
prophecies
the one
about-
the one had said that we basically mocked God with our title.
No, not mocking God at all.
He also claims that he was sent here to be the mediator. Many things
Yeah.
that were, I think, wrong. They were misunderstood.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to the original thing. We should try to think a little bit before we speak.
Right.
You know, I'm a bit more of an asshole,
Well, yeah, I
and
mean, I'm getting old, so
may
my asshole days are behind me.
may look. Listen, I ain't gonna pretend I'm not, and
Yeah, but
you know.
I love the assholing.
But
You're keep it up.
I don't think that we never got his name. But sir, I don't think you have to apologize.
Yeah,
You have a belief.
yeah.
You have a thought system. Whether it was misguided or not, did it not bring you here? And are we not speaking?
He didn't actually apologize. He just said, "Yeah,
Well, either way, no apology is necessary.
right." You he says, "But yeah, this way of conversation is going to make you read my words as harsher than they are."
Whatever way, what it doesn't matter. Um, uh, perception is important.
Yeah,
Subjectivism is important.
yeah.
The world comes in four ways of knowing. But back to the original thing, and I want him to know this about us. Why should I buy into archetypes? The question to me is why should I believe in anything? There's an earlier question. Are some ideas worse than others? Why should I believe in
But
archetypes?
don't you find archetypes in you find those in the Bible? I mean, Melchizedek. No one really. Well, me, my whole life, I never really understood what he represented. But I think in my older age, I'm starting to see that he was a representation of Christ, the high priestess of God.
I'll tell you why I believe in archetypes.
Okay.
I believe in archetypes because I believe that's a table.
Yeah. Well, yes. Yeah,
That's a
that is a
collection.
table.
That's a collection of
Yeah.
particles.
Yeah.
But yet my word,
Yeah.
which is now listen to this. Every word that I speak
Mhm.
is made of letters. But is it? When I say there's a T, an H, and an E. But is there? When I speak them, is there a T, an H, and an E with us?
No.
Not physically, no.
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 That's how we interpret the sounds that we make in our speech, but the speech was there before the letters were.
The potential of the sound was there before.
Yeah.
Then the sounds are made. Then the sounds are put together in combination and have meaning. All right? Then the sounds are given a symbol. Symbol is related to archetype.
Yeah.
Look at the early writing of men. What are they?
The early writing of men.
Men. They're pictures.
Yeah.
They're pictures.
Absolutely. One of the things that you learn in the Catholic Church was why we have stained glass windows, because a lot of people couldn't read, so they had to tell the biblical story in some way. So they were able to tell everything from the Stations of the Cross to the Immaculate Conception, all the way through to the death and resurrection of Christ through windows to people who were illiterate.
Now, I'm gonna go and try to really nail this whole idea and more too. So, in the beginning, Hebrew, breath, speaking, God speaks.
Right.
Greek, New Testament, logos, logic, dialogue, speaking, logic and speaking, thinking and speaking. Okay, so we have this establishment. So God speaks, and the world essentially is created
Right.
through speaking things out.
Right.
I imagine he would be doing, but from what we have in writing,
Right.
he is speaking.
Right.
Now, he gives it the verbal category of good.
Yeah.
Good is a value,
Right.
right? So now we have value systems, we have words, and Adam's first task
Right.
is words. What are the animals? Discover their essence. What the human mind can do is see the thing and give it an essence. That's discovery.
Right.
Logic leads to discovery. Okay? Now, God gives us the stories. He gives us characters. Now, I believe these characters existed, but he felt that they must go into a book, into its narrative, and be spoken as such.
Right.
That you must learn of Cain and Abel, but you don't need to know every moment of Cain and Abel's life. You must know these moments. Okay?
And don't leave Cain out of the narrative, because it makes Abel. If Cain's not there, it takes away from the whole story.
So Cain and Abel have to do what? Make sacrifices.
Right.
Sacrifices are nothing but symbolic.
Yeah.
The sacrifices, the offerings, are smoke. Just as much as when I say the
Right.
T, the H, and the E are nothing but smoke.
Right.
The the metaphysical world. So what I mean by metaphysical world, I say Cain. You can imagine Cain.
Right.
Have you ever seen Cain? You've never seen him before.
No.
You don't know what his face looks like.
No.
If I say Abel, though, you have a being. What is that? Where is that coming from? That's an archetype. Your archetype is informing you of what Cain is, what Abel is. This happens for reality as well. So, for instance, like I said, we must know fiction, or not fiction, I'm sorry. We must know narrative to know history, to know how to write it. And we've talked about this before. There are things about Plato that are not reality, that are written about Plato.
Yeah.
There are things about Socrates that are not reality, that are written of Socrates.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that old. There is a jacket of George Washington's that's riddled in bullet holes because they claimed that bullets would fly at Washington and yet would never hit his body. This is not reality.
No.
God, there was, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, God may tell me otherwise, but what my point is, there's no God intervention on Washington. We've taken Washington and we've turned him into mythology.
Right.
Was he real? Yes, he was real. But he's just as real as my words are.
Right.
And he's accompanied by a T, an H, and an E.
Right.
He's accompanied by symbol, and he's accompanied by archetype. Symbol is the lesser form of archetype. Archetype is the deeper form.
Yeah. It's the symbol is, it's just that. It's a symbol.
It's a symbol. It points to.
The feeling or the thoughts that intrude your mind upon seeing the symbol
Yeah.
are your archetypes.
Archetype is the essence.
Yeah. Like, for instance, you see a swastika in Japan.
Yeah.
Japanese use that to mark their temples. You see a swastika in India, much the same. But you see one in America or Germany, it takes on a completely different meaning. You see it in Mesoamerica on the bottom of their ancient ziggurats and pyramids. Completely different meaning.
Table, the word table is symbol reference to table. I say table and you can think of the basic table, infinite. We have access to the category of table.
Right.
Actual table is informed by the archetype that rises up, a reciprocal knowing from the subconscious, my subconscious, your subconscious, looking at the table and informing its reality.
Right.
It is really there.
It's why if you were born today with no human help and you were raised in the wild, you would know that a tree is a tree, even if you didn't call it that.
You would discover it as you go, just as Adam had to.
Yeah, you would know that this plant is a plant or the sun is the sun.
Separating.
Yeah. You automatically categorize these things in your mind
instead of becoming overwhelmed by the soup of atomic structure.
Right.
You know, overwhelmed by the bombardment of bouncing photons and confusion and blending of categories. Which, by the way, the Bible in the category laws, the category laws are broken throughout the Bible. So, for instance, like the ideas of the mixing of the fabrics. Right? We shouldn't do that. Okay. Go look at the instructions of the tabernacle.
Yeah.
Why now?
Right.
Because God's making a point about categories. When you read the Bible, you just read it. It's there. It's so, once it pops out at you, you go, ah. And you can keep going back and keep going back and keep going back.
You'll get more and more and more,
every single time.
You know, you'll get more every single time.
So what we're doing here is it's not to offend. You don't have to apologize. Yeah. You did come at us really hard because I think you misunderstood us. And we're not here to humble you, and we're not here to say we're smarter than you, and we're not here to go, oh, look how many books we read. We despise that. We love books. We like talking about them with one another. And of course, we're going to make references to ideas. Of course we are. Yeah. We're not afraid of them. I mean, we've both been in combat situations. What the hell do I give a... bullets are much scarier than bad ideas. Right. Although, no, I'm going to take that back.
Bad ideas are more dangerous than bullets.
Bad ideas are more dangerous than bullets.
Yeah, you know, one of Dr. Souls' his quotes are, Intellectuals. I'm gonna quote him loosely. Intellectual is a person who pays no price for the results of his bad ideas.
Oh man.
you know, one of them was I think was it Bertrand Russell? No, it wasn't Bertrand Russell. What was the British playwright?
British play like a contemporary one?
Yeah, what was his name during around the time of World War II?
Oh.
What was his name? I can't remember. But anyway, he said that before he went on vacation to South Africa, yeah, Hitler has Europe well in hand. Nothing's gonna happen.
Mm.
you know, he goes to
Oof.
South Africa, war breaks out. Same thing with the British. What was it? The prime minister before he spoke to Hitler.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What was his name? I
The one
can't.
they voted out for Churchill, right?
Yeah, it was just like dude, you'll be in infamy forever.
Yeah. Not only him, but the royal family had some dealings
Yeah,
with the one brother who would be king but never did. It's like, yeah, let's go shake hands with the guy.
yeah.
Of course.
Not Noam Chomsky. What the is his name? Neville Chamberlain. Neville Chamberlain. Oh my God, head hurt. Yeah, he was the one who didn't think anything was gonna happen.
You see, our processors are slow. We don't know everything.
No. I glitch as I get older, man.
Well, look though, too. I mean, also look. Here's something. Here's something for the guy. If you're still watching, when I grew up, and I've told you this, I didn't have good access to literature and knowledge.
No.
I like to think and I like to talk and I like to ponder things, but it wasn't until I had a really great uncle who's still alive. I love him. He's amazing, and so we go visit him, and I'll make this quick because we really probably should be wrapping this up. But I go on a vacation to Michigan, and he's like, "Oh, he's like, you like this? You might like these too." And he starts getting out a bunch of books, all sorts of things, all sorts of Bukowski and just all sorts of stuff, nasty stuff. Which you probably, if you don't like Oscar Wilde,
Yeah.
you ain't gonna like Bukowski, my
No,
friend.
Bukowski is like George Carlin philosophy.
Exactly, hard-boiled eggs and pussy.
Yeah.
Um,
No,
as they exit the chat.
now, on the other hand, I did have access to these things. My grandmother, my father's mom, was a very learned woman, probably the most intelligent woman I've ever known in my life. And her father, my great grandfather George, from the time that I could learn my ABCs, sent me books every year, twice a year. Sent me a new book series, and my grandmother insisted on it. I don't know if she did this with every grandchild she had, but I think me and another cousin were the only ones that actually lived with her for any extended period of time. She insisted on me reading constantly, and every time I would happen upon my grandmother, no matter where she was, she had her nose in a book. And it was my free time, it was my punishment, it was my study, it was my practice. If I
Yeah.
wasn't reading, I had to play chess with my grandfather. So I always had access to these things, which I utterly at the time rejected. It was just like a big waste of time for me. I hated reading these damn books. But as I got older, I appreciated it because a lot of the things that high school and in college, people would talk about stories, and we're going to read this story. It was like, hark, I've already read this. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
already know this. It put me ahead in a lot of ways.
See, I was neglecting those assignments until after this trip. I ended up taking what was it, like sophomore year, maybe, a literature course. I read all the books there and all that. So my point was I fell in love with literature.
Yeah.
My mother was so mad when we got home because I threw out all my clothes and filled my bags with books for my uncle instead.
That's what's up.
And I read all those books and I fell in love and I needed more and I needed more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved everything I was discovering, and what I was discovering was fantasy worlds and adventures and new ways of thinking. I mean, the reason I joked about Bukowski's because I didn't know anyone wrote like that.
No,
And I'm not afraid of Bukowski. He's
no,
a dirty old man. Do
yeah,
dirty old men exist? Yes, they
yes,
do. I went
yes.
to prison with some of them.
And here's one of my favorite philosophers or favorite people to read. She is a 100% atheist, believed in no mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
Was Ayn Rand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She wrote beautiful stories in the romance format, and despite what anyone thinks about her politically from either side, she was great at painting a picture, and she made some of the strongest female protagonists that I've ever come across. you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, uh, there's but just because I like her writings and I like her, and I find some similarities with her philosophy, I still believe in God. I don't believe you could wake her from her grave now and she would proclaim Christ. That's how
Right.
hard against it she was. That's how bad against it she was. I remember once she was asked, um, what if your husband, what if you died and found out that that God was real? Would you come back to warn your husband? And she was like, no, why not? Why would I? Because I won't find that out.
That's
She,
wild.
she really she really believed that.
Well,
And
a subject on humbling too. I used to be the atheist. Now, my view on what an atheist is different. This is the wrestling with God thing. This is the Jacob Israel thing.
yeah,
Um, Even though I was a quote unquote atheist, I was having some of the harshest, most real conversations with God at that time. Visceral, angry, ashamed,
hmm,
impassioned.
yeah.
Why this? Why that? Why me?
But no
And then,
matter what, you
and
can always feel his eyes on you.
oh boy, oh boy.
You can always feel his eyes on you.
Now here's the thing, though.
Yeah.
It was not this harsh evangelical fire brimstone like Southern Baptist style that brought me in.
Mm.
That was not it at all.
No.
You know what it was? It was Freud. It was
Uh,
Jung.
yeah.
It was Neumann.
Yeah.
It was all these people that apparently can be, I guess, seen as heathenish despisers of whatever. No, that's what brought me in. Because what ended up happening was secretly first I started admitting to myself, oh man, I believe these stories. I believe them metaphysically and physically. And then I started vocalizing that to the people around me. And then the next step was, well, I believe in them and I believe in God. I always have. Maybe I should start practicing. Maybe I should start getting into that pattern
Yeah.
and into those symbols and start steeping myself
And
in.
the thing is, you
Then
do
I
that
started going to
naturally.
church.
You start to do that naturally. My grandfather, my mom's father, was a very devout Catholic,
Hmm.
and my mom and all of her sisters, except one who died a Catholic, they left the church.
Hmm.
And when my mom left the church, she took us with her, and we go to a Baptist church. I
Mm.
saw someone get what they call the Holy Spirit, and she almost stepped on me a few times. I went back to my grandpa and I cried. I was like, I never want to go back there again.
Yeah.
Never, ever. And he goes to her and he says, you know what? The boy is going to mass with me because we were living with him at the time. And she was like, but dad, and he was like, no, he's going with me. And I'm back in mass, right? And then in high school, you fall off a little bit. And I go to a church with a friend. It was a Pentecostal church, and
Mm.
the
Hmm.
reverend, I guess, possibly got wind that I was a Catholic, and he tells me, he preaches from the pulpit, but he's kind of looking at me. He said, "You're going to hell, and your blood's going to be the barbecue sauce." And yeah, I never went back to that church
Yeah, that's
again.
the way to get them.
Yeah, never doing that again. And as my grandfather got older and he ultimately passed, I started going back to mass with him, and I just and I never really left it again. I brought my kids up in it. They all went through catechism. They all went through their first communions and everything. And even though to this day I still have issues, like sometimes I'll go to mass, sometimes I won't. Um, but I do know that leaving my faith and leaving the church, leaving God is not an option. It's not even something that I contemplate like in my youth,
Hmm.
where I would go through my agnostic periods,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, of seeing something in the world and trying to rationalize it through my human understanding, and wondering why God would let this happen.
I've gotten past that too.
Yeah, I'm done with that. you know.
Mine really hit hard when I was living in LA, so 2017, sometime around then. The struggle wasn't about whether or not I believed. The struggle was about what in the heck do I do with this socially now? What do I do with this with myself? What does that
Right.
mean for my entire past? You got to think, okay, I'm in now. I've got this, and now I'm completely terrified because I've been living like a little shit my
Yeah.
like this whole time. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh boy. And look, and I sit here now, like anyone listening to this is going to notice certain things. Like I have harsh language. I was in the Marine Corps, right? The
Right.
whole like sailor talk.
Right. Right.
My language is that. I don't have the, just the ums and all that. I've also got the fucks, shits, and whatever. Word, words don't. I'm not, another thing I'm not afraid of. And then to add to it, just recently, a short stint in prison again. I'm
Yeah, we all fall short, man. If you're not being tested by God, those
well,
who God love, he tests.
my point is the sin, the sin, the language. I can be coarse. I can be sharp. I can be. I'm a bit of an asshole. I'm cruel. I judge, and I'm a Lutheran, by the way.
Yeah.
Judgment as a Lutheran,
Yeah.
that goes against my whole
Well,
doctrine, and
well,
yet I do it. Why do I do it though, Thomas? Why was Oscar Wilde a homosexual?
well.
You know what I mean?
Let me go back to Rand. She had a quote
Let's
that
humble
really,
ourselves.
really opened my mind.
Yeah,
She said, "Judge and be prepared to be judged."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, and the I guess that means that if I'm going to judge, I better make sure that, like Jordan Peterson says, my room is clean, my
Mm-hmm.
house is in order,
Yeah,
and once I do that, then I can start judging. And
I can tell you mine is not, and I be
mine is
judging.
not, yeah,
You
mine
know,
is not.
look,
But judgment is what you have to do to get through life. I mean, we develop the type of eyes we have to judge whether we see snakes in the grass or not,
mm-hmm.
and to judge whether we need to run away from this damn thing. Is it a
Yeah,
viper or a garter snake? That's a
yeah.
judgment,
Is it? Should I be worried to offend this guy because he's making me feel weird, or should I allow him to keep imposing on whatever? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
When you meet these, I remember
Well, if it comes to a certain point, then yeah, absolutely.
exactly.
Sell your cloak, buy a sword. Lord teaches my hand to
I would
war.
rather offend somebody and tell them get the fuck away from me than be caught up in some situation like, oh man, he's the weirdo with the gun. You know what I mean? He's the
Yeah,
guy who walked into the gas station and blew everyone away. I would rather like be like, I'll wait till he gets out of the gas station before I go in. I'm getting weird vibes.
yeah.
Got to judge. In our I won't go into the details. We should never do that here, but in our line of work that we both shared,
Right,
you
right.
had to do some judging.
Oh
You
yeah.
had to do some
Oh, yeah.
discrimination.
Oh, that's the whole basis of my job.
Had to.
Profiling is key.
It'll save you.
Yeah,
It'll save
absolutely.
your
Yeah.
life.
There's been times where I didn't profile.
Oh, and you get caught up in some stuff, man.
I don't know if you remember this, and I'm going to try to keep this as bland as possible so
Hmm.
people don't
Yeah.
know. I was attempting to remove an undesirable from the area of operation. This undesirable, for some reason, it didn't click with me. I had been all over the fucking world. I've been on military bases and watched soldiers work, but it didn't dawn on me that this guy was a threat. He didn't look like a threat to me, you know, and but he did have an air of confidence that was just
Mm.
unbelievably high for somebody that I knew physically could not match me in any way, you know, and finally get the guy outside, and he's armed.
Oof.
He's armed. They let me know that while he was walking, a magazine fell onto a certain area, and he pulls the weapon and he shoots across the area.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I remember.
he shoots across the area and he runs. We
Yeah,
find the weapon, and my whole existence
yeah.
kind of shriveled a little bit. I couldn't believe that I didn't judge him harshly enough to
Mhm.
realize that for somebody who's 5'1" and 400 pounds to act the way that he did was completely out of character. It had to be uh, liquid courage and courage knowing that he had a weapon on him.
Yeah.
You know,
So even though I do judge some people harshly, and I probably shouldn't, even some people I no longer have contact with, I'll be in the shower having imaginary arguments with them, even though I haven't seen them since like the Marine Corps
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
or whatever. You know what I mean? But the
Damn, I
thing
should
is,
have said that. I should have
now
said
on this subject, I made some judgments on this guy, but
that. Mm,
these knee-jerk judgments, they're serious. They're not meant to be insults. I
no,
do worry that something's wrong. I am
right,
concerned about that because looking at the situation, I've been there. For like the last 4 years, I've been dealing with up and down like stints of feeling worthless, depression, like these kinds of things. Like, oh, this happened, and I'm such a loser. I'm such a dumbass. Why did I do that? Why is this going? You know what I mean? So I totally get that. And when I get in those moods, or if I get into that dark place, that tends to be when I'm on X arguing with some dude about some stupid shit that has nothing to do with nothing.
right,
And
right.
I don't even care about. And I worry, so I see that pattern there. So if that is the case, I really hope that the dude, irons it out, works on it, and just realize me and Thomas, we're like good dudes. We love people.
Yeah,
We will talk to you. We'll answer your questions, but don't come at us with too much heat. You know, we got enough judgment for ourselves.
right,
I don't sit
right,
here and I'm not
right.
going to judge Thomas,
No,
and he's not
that's
judging me. We sharpen each other's knives through a different means.
or if you want to consider the term Christian and what it means to be Christ-like.
Hmm.
He did go and smash the tables in the temple, but he surrounded himself with people who weren't necessarily savory.
Prostitutes,
Yeah.
thieves.
Yeah, Peter, if you think about the prowess he had to have to take a man's ear and nothing else off, had to be a very skilled swordsman. And have his head, to and Mark, was it Mark or was it Matthew that was the not Matthew, what was his name, that the tax collector?
Oh, the guy who like climbed the tree and then he's like Jesus, Jesus.
He was the tax collector that Jesus told him to follow me.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think any of these guys were without uh, some some darkness initially when Christ met them. Mary Magdalene, we all know that story. The prostitute and the stones. Um, it's much better for you to come into these areas and look for the good than it is for you to search for and try to try to meet out the bad, because you might find out that your perception is skewed.
Yeah.
You know,
Doesn't matter how many books you've read.
doesn't
You probably read more than me.
probably
Like I
maybe
said,
it's a
I didn't start
possibility.
reading till later.
Yeah,
I don't think I know so much. It's
right.
totally cool.
No,
It's totally fine. So I don't care how many books you've read. You're not going to stop me from having this conversation with my good friend who I love. And
and let Christ be the savior.
yeah,
All right, you don't have to do it. He made that sacrifice on the cross for all of us.
you should just be. You should just be the. You should just be able to speak. The way to get to somebody, and I'm telling you because I've been there. The way to get to somebody is through conversation and
Yeah,
just understanding. You say, "Hey, you happen to believe in God?" "No, I don't believe in God." "Oh, interesting. Let's have some thought
tell me more
experiments.
about
Let's
it.
have fun with
You
it.
know,
What
yeah,
happens if this happened? What happen? You don't say, "I'm
yeah.
going to prove to you that God is real." No, no, no,
Or
no.
if you
Just
see
talk
me,
about it.
if you see me reading a religious text from another faith, don't just assume that,
Right.
because you will see me
Oh yeah.
reading Hindu scripts, Islamic scripts, um, Sumerian text. I've gone through the Quran and the
The poetic Edda,
yeah. Uh, it
the
doesn't
Enuma
mean,
Elish.
yeah,
You
the
just picked that
Enuma
up, right?
Elish, the Hadiths. I will go through those things again if I have to, just so I remain knowledgeable enough about them to, in some cases, share stories, or in other cases, refute. Um, that, but me reading it doesn't make me inherently evil.
No.
It's just I want to be able to recognize what is not of my belief system.
You're here in the world.
Yeah,
You are here in the world, and you must experience the world. You have no other choice. God wants you to experience this.
yeah,
He wants you to work at it.
right.
Working in the soil means opening those books. It means getting your hands in the soil. It means getting into a relationship. It means getting into fights, raising your children. It means all of these things.
Yeah,
Getting in your car and driving around. What you should not be is idle.
right,
You should not be idle.
right.
You should not sit around. You're not meant to lock yourself up in a temple and never speak again and keep bending over and praying and praying and praying and praying and praying. It's not what you're
Yeah,
here for.
that's something you can get from Marcus Aurelius. You're not built for comfort.
Yeah.
You're not built to stay in the warmth of your sheets. You're built to work. You're built to live. You're built to think. You need to go out there and do so.
You will leave this world.
Yeah,
There's no doubt about that.
yeah, yeah,
There is definitely a hierarchy of, let's say, value system in which the earth is what is dead. That doesn't mean that you're dead now. You're not dead. You
right,
are alive. You are in history.
right,
You are in post paradise. What are you going to do about it?
right.
Are you going to are you going to let everything just fall on the sins of Adam and Eve and just sit back and
Yeah,
not do anything about it? You're not gonna go up to God and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I've masturbated. I'm sorry. You know what? Maybe my language was foul in front of my mother.
right.
Maybe I shouldn't have smoked so much fucking cancer sticks into my lungs."
But if you're in a constant state of prayer, if you're in a constant state of worship, you are always constantly calling out God's name with every breath you take, then you are always constantly asking for forgiveness. 100%. That's my personal belief. There's a there's a there's a utility in always thinking about God, no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're reading. I read Dorian Gray. Of course, I'm thinking about God when I read it. I read the Communist Manifesto or any of Vladimir Lenin books. Of course, I'm thinking about God. That's how I stay pointed true north, and I don't get swayed by any of their arguments.
Yeah.
That is my close for this. It was nice chatting with each and every one of you who watch. My friend Derek here, great mind, good man, and a good friend. We will be doing this a lot more often. Holiday seasons are kind of disruptive. We're gonna try to be back on next Friday at around 7 or 8 o'clock. I think you said. Or
Yeah,
was
we
it
could
eight
do it
or 9?
around those times.
Yeah, it'll be somewhere in those times. But
I got to get those
have
kitties
we
off the bed.
chosen what the next read is going to be?
We talked about The Alchemist, but I don't have access
You need
to
The
it.
Alchemist.
And I have I just finished John Adams, like
Okay.
literally tonight. I
I don't
finished it.
think I would cut that in a week, but
Well, no, the reason I mentioned that though is because I have The Wages of Destruction, which means I'm only going to begin that tonight.
Okay.
And that thing's like this big.
let me see if I have another copy of The Alchemist. Stand by.
Well, I'm going to say goodnight to these guys, and then let's see if there's any other duplicate books of interest. I'll take a quick skim. I'm going to close on the word of revelation. I had mentioned that people have revelations in books, even if they're people who live in sin. We all live in sin. That's my point there. Revelation as a is not a direct reference to the book Revelation. Revelation, etymology, to reveal. And people can reveal things to themselves and dabbling in journaling or writing in fiction, which I write fiction, I have had revelations. I think there have been a few revelations on this podcast tonight. And like Thomas, I want to say thank you, guys, for watching. And sir, I think that you do have a very good mind. Please keep engaging with us, but you know, don't think that we're just like these like crazy, vain Dorian Greys who worship our own minds or Lord Henrys or anything like that. And I love you guys. And this was in the beginning was the thought.
No Dorian Gray. I mean, no Alchemist. I think my kids have all the copies.